Uh-oh, that doesn't sound very loud. I think we're good to go, Todd? Yeah. Okay, I'd say that didn't sound as loud as normal. All right, welcome everybody to our Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 City Council meeting. This is our 6 p.m. workshop session where we will be talking about the library ordinance, which will be led by, I think, Mayor Pro Tem is going to lead that. We'll do a quick informal roll call and then we'll do the official one when we start our regular meeting. So Councilmember Cargill.
Present.
Councilmember Hertz. Present. Councilmember Van Rollen. Here. Mayor Pro Tem.
Here.
Councilmember Spencer.
Present.
Councilmember Dunn.
Happy to be here.
Councilmember Sahlberg.
Here.
All right, all present and accounted for. So we will jump right into it if you're ready. Mayor Pro Tem. You're just getting hooked up there.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really prepare anything official.
Yep.
It is a workshop.
Yep.
So the workshop agendas.
Oh.
However, I guess, how do we want to start the conversation? I guess, I don't want to speak for the group. I'll just speak for myself. I think probably one of the places to start this discussion is to eliminate the confusion on who's got the authority to do what. Is that a fair discussion to start the conversation?
Yeah, as written, the current interpretation of the ordinance is that the council has financial oversight and the board has all authority over library policy, and which has been that way since the beginning.
Not true.
Yeah, I looked up all the old ordinances.
Go ahead.
Okay. Recognize.
No, oh, sorry. Yeah, go workshop a little bit less formal. Just don't speak over each other.
Okay, perfect. I had an article sent from MRSC sent to all of the council members. So we're kind of all on the same page. What it basically talks about is there's libraries that are set up in Washington State that are their own entities, their own library districts. And there's libraries that are set up in code cities, which is what we are. Being set up in a code city, we kind of treat them like they're a department. We finance them like they're one of the departments, and we oversee them like they're one of the departments. That hasn't changed.
Right.
Whether it was on an ordinance or not, it was just kind of a something that we just relied on. So if you're reading what the provisions had talked about, it says every code city may exercise the powers relating to the acquisition, development, improvement, and operation of libraries and museums and the preservation of historical materials to the same extent authorized by general law for cities of any class. So that pretty much tells you, I mean, like tonight, later on, we're going to be talking about financial policies. That comes before the city as well as any other department. The library policies would also come before the city council. That hasn't changed. That's my 2 cents. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read the whole article.
No, just a quick clarification. So that may be what the MRSC information says, but the city's ordinances that were passed call out that the council has financial oversight. It doesn't say anything about having oversight into the policies. And that's what the library board of trustees was set up for. I just don't want the two to be confused because I looked up, we've got ordinance 131, A, B, and C, and that part did not change. So I think Councilmember Sahlberg has his hand up.
Yes, Wendy, I appreciate the question and the answer that came from them. At the very end of it, it didn't give a definitive answer to the conflict between RCW 35 and RCW 27. Where you're going from the beginning of the discussion is 35. 27 says trustees immediately upon their appointment or election shall meet and organize blah, blah, and adopt such bylaws, rules, and regulations for their own guidance for the government of the library as they deem expedient. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. That is the RCW that gives the library trustees the responsibility to set up their own, as it says here, bylaws. And nowhere in RCW 27 does it say that there's council oversight. 35 seems to, but not definitively, allow for it. So
Just for your reference, from day one, we've had the policies come before the city council.
Well-
So that,
Mhm.
that has been from day one.
it hasn't been for the last 8 years that I've been coming.
No.
I haven't been here for 8 years.
Yeah, I have.
So, so that was kind of a difference for me to come back in and see some of those things that have always happened are not happening anymore. So yes, we did. We have a library board that makes those policies and do their due diligence of trying to make sure that everything is, you know, where it needs to be. But those same policies came back before the city council.
I don't have that information handy, but we will go back and confirm or deny since over the last 8 to 10 years. And I don't remember ever voting on any library policies. I don't know, Dan, if you do. And I
It is
just
not familiar.
sitting
No.
here the same amount of time. Okay, any next? Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you, Mary. As I've thought about this issue for the past couple of months, to me, it has always come back to who and what is ultimately accountable for the decisions that not only the library board makes, but also the city departments. And I agree with Councilmember Van Orman that I'm not really sure I see much of a difference between the setup of the library board and the setup of the other city departments. For instance, or city commissions, for instance, the planning commission. We would ultimately have the final say on anything that comes from the planning commission, but 9 times out of 10, we approve what comes out of the planning commission. And it never really becomes an issue. But the citizens know that if they don't agree with something that the planning commission does, they can appeal their decision to the city council. I'm not really sure, as I think about this, who we would say that the library board is accountable to. Is it accountable to us? Is it accountable to the citizens? Who are they accountable to? And that's where I have a little trouble with the policy change, because it would be different if our library board were elected directly by the citizens, or there was a way for the citizens to remove a library board member if they didn't like it, a decision that was made by the board. But right now that mechanism does not exist. And I'm not concerned so much for my sake. I'm concerned for the sake of the citizens who may not like a decision that any of our boards or commissions make. And I know that they can attend a meeting. You can attend a planning commission too, meeting as well. But that's what I'm thinking of as I think about this particular issue is the accountability factor. We're accountable to the citizens. The different commissions and departments of the city are accountable to us and to the citizens. But there seems to be a disconnect with the library board.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in here and there because I've got the ordinance in front of me just to keep things clear as we're going through the discussion. So, and again, I named the wrong ordinance number. So it's 118 A, B, C, whatever we're on now. So the original ordinance 119, which, and I went back and looked at the difference between the original and the current one. And it's only with regards to figuring out how much money the library gets each year. So none of these other pieces of the ordinance were touched. Section 6 on page 3 of the ordinance, Board of Trustees talks about the creation. Except as otherwise provided in this ordinance or state law, the management of the Liberty Lake Public Library shall be vested in the Board of Trustees. It goes through the appointments, it goes through terms, vacancies, salary. It does go through, have a removal policy. A member of the Board of Trustees may be may only be removed by a majority vote of the city council of the city of Liberty Lake. And then it specifically lists powers and duties. The Board of Trustees shall have the power and duty to do the following: adopt such bylaws, rules, and regulations for the guidance of the Board of Trustees and for the use of the Liberty Lake Public Library, supervise, care, and have custody of all property of the library, including the rooms and buildings or buildings constructed, leased, or set apart therefore, make recommendations to the city council concerning functions, authority, compensation, and duties of the city librarian. Make a recommendation to the mayor concerning the appointment of a city librarian qualified under RCW such and such. Submit a budget, accept gifts of money and property for the library, and perform all other acts and duties necessarily for the orderly and efficient management and control of the library. So further back in the ordinance, it does talk about the duties of the council, authority of the council and mayor, set a budget, adopt a final budget. 8B is again financial. C is approving contracts. D is establishing the functions, duties, and compensation of the city librarian and employees. That's it. So there's no discussion about the council having authority over the policy. And this was the original one. And again, the current one, that's the same. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with regards to what it does say. So I saw another hand pop up. I thought. Yep, Councilmember Van Orman.
So to go further down inside of this article, the board is thus an integral part of the library bylaw.
Oh, the article.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah, this is an article from
Yeah.
MRC, not the current ordinance.
and no city, be it council, commission, or manager, has authority to abolish or reduce its functions except as authorized by law. So if it's not currently in our ordinance, it sounds to me like that's something this council needs to talk about and probably put in there if that's what the council desires.
Well, I think that's why we're having this workshop, because I think that was the question that came up during further discussion during the previous discussions. So that's what the workshop is about. Is there something you guys want as a body want to address and consider changing? And if so, what is it? What form does that take? And then if there's a majority to bring that back under an updated ordinance, that's up to you guys. That's your job. Go ahead, Councilmember Sahlberg.
Again, maybe I should have just given you a call, Wendy, and we could have talked about this, but what you read deals specifically with the city council not being able to abolish the library board of trustees.
You have to realize we are the law. We're the city council that makes the laws of the
Oh,
city for Liberty Lake.
Oh, I've been involved in the law for a while. Thanks for telling
Yeah,
me.
you have.
That's not what this is saying. You've taken it out of context. The particular part of the MRSC, not the RCW, that you're referring to says the board is an integral part of the library by law, and no city government, be it council, commission, or manager, has the authority to abolish or reduce its functions. That's what it's referring to. Not to the governance of the library.
So what would we be reducing?
You'd be taking power away from the board to
It's,
develop and put in place policy.
I don't believe that this city council would want to take over those duties of making the policy.
But isn't that kind of what the crux of the last argument was? I mean, I feel like that was like the whole point of all of it, was that the ability of the Board of Trustees to independently, it
Mhm.
felt like put in place the policies to which the council did not have oversight was the crux of the issue that brought about the emotion last time we all met. So I think that is actually the issue today.
Who has oversight of the library was the crux of the issue. It was
Yep.
mentioned several times.
And so I think that that's why we called this workshop together. And if it's okay to ask, I know it's a workshop, but we do have the trustees here, and I don't know if there was a more from having us meet together, which I think was Mayor Pro Tem's original suggestion, but if they are here, is it possible to engage them in this conversation, this workshop?
I don't know if they're prepared to do that. I see one, I see two here.
Excuse
Oh,
me.
three. Yeah, I
Can we just continue our conversation before we go there,
Yeah.
please? Thank you. I'd like to jump back in here if I can.
Yep, sure.
So my takeaway from our last discussion was it's not about the bylaws or the policies that the trustees are making or proposing. It's the final say, like every other department of the city. That's what it was about for me. And all it is it's another form of checks and balances, because as you read through our ordinance, it says that the council has the authority to deal with the budget, really not much more, and we approve the appointments by the mayor. But we can't remove anybody.
Yeah, you can.
We can.
Only the mayor can if you read
No.
the ordinance.
No.
Where does it say in the
Yeah,
ordinance?
right here.
Which one?
Section 6, F.
119.
A member of the Board of Trustees may only be removed by a majority vote of the city council of the city of Liberty Lake.
At any time, I think, that's my
Yeah.
interpretation too.
Well, then it also says under what the mayor's authority is, it only talks about the mayor being able to appoint and remove.
Missed that. I
Item,
wouldn't do that.
item
without.
2E,
Appoint and remove all in.
2E.
Yeah, but this is appoint and remove all officers and employees of the public library. It doesn't say anything about the board.
Okay, I guess I misread that then.
That's okay.
Okay. But as I read the MRSC guidance, and that's all it is guidance. They're not a legislative body. They're not elected. Right? But what I did take away from it was the reference to chapter 27 of the RCW refers to rural, intercounty, and regional libraries. That's the law of the land for those libraries. It says right in this recommendation, it talks about most general purpose libraries in Washington state are districts organized under chapter 2712. However, several libraries are departments of their city and town, such as, and we are one of them listed. Okay, Seattle, Tacoma, so on and so on, Pullman, Camas, Aberdeen, so on. So, and then later in this guidance, I'll call it, because for me, it's like anything else that comes from MRSC or AWC. They're not a legislative body. So it's guidance, it's a recommendation. So for me, chapter 27 pertains to a public library that is funded for the good of a bigger geological area, such as a county or regional, or like it says, rural. But when you get into the city, municipal libraries, it refers in this recommendation from MRSC to the city of Kelso's ordinance. And I don't know if anybody's read it, but it says here, some of it mirrors chapter or RCW 27, but much of it doesn't, because they geared it towards what they wanted to see their legislative body, how they want to interact with that portion of their city and that department. They even call it a department. They don't even call it a board of trustees. They call it a library advisory board. Okay, so, but they use the 5 voting members. They use a lot of the same language from RCW 27, which is a state-driven guidance if you have no other. The way I interpret RCW 35, and if you go a step further, RCW 35A is you can pick and choose as a code city. And that's what we are. And that's the difference for me. So I'm not for me personally, I'm not interested in getting in their business about bylaws or policy or any of that. We talk about their budget, but they propose it and we look it over and yeah, we check that box. So why is signing off on a policy change or a bylaw change for them any different than any other department on how we do business within the city? That's been my question. Not looking to take away any authority or any power that how they want to operate. But there's got to be checks and balances. And the last change to their policy was they took out the city council final approval. And the city of Kelso refers to with final approval by the council. Now, if you look at the ordinance from the city of Spokane, they have washed their hands of all of it and they just said, we're going to follow RCW 27 flat out. So I don't understand the reason why they would do that, but that's their prerogative and that's their legislative action. Right? So for me, as I read the ordinance, and as I've chased these RCWs, because it talks about RCW 27, and even our own ordinance says 35A 2710, which I printed it off and I could read it for everybody, but I won't. However, if you chase these numbers, it basically says we are a legislative body, and like our attorney has said, per ordinance, we can mold this how we feel best fits our scenario or how we operate as a city. So that's my take on the two. Not either one is set in stone. It's our job as a council to decide which parts we want to apply to ourselves. Does that make sense?
Maybe pause and see if Sean has any input at this point with regards to, because I know there are discrepancies that are unresolved. So is there anything you want to add on that
So,
regard?
yeah, there's, I think, multiple levels here. I think if you start at the top, which is the creation of a library district or the creation of a library, you have those of their own district and those one set of statutory scheme. Then you have the other one that is tied to the city and whether it's a department or whatever you want to call it. The reason why you have multiple statutory schemes that are in play is there's no definitive answer relative to those statutes. So what you see from MRSC is trying to mold those schemes together to see what the library would look like where you don't have its own established library district. So then it delegates authority to the cities to create the library board and their duties and functions and whatnot by ordinance. And so that's what the city of Liberty Lake did was, here's our ordinance, here's what the bylaws are through the Board of Trustees. To me, if it's just a situation of having oversight, because financially that oversight is already there. Phil's already made reference to it. There's a proposal of the budget that comes back to the council. They review it, they can make changes to it because it's all a part of the overall budget of the city. So now what's the next step? Well, the next step then is, well, what does it relates to the functions of the board and or policies of the board? If it's, and what I'm hearing is that the council doesn't want to get involved in the Board of Trustees day-to-day actions or the operations of the library, but it wants to be able to have some oversight on what may happen. And so to me, that seems to be a function of the powers and duties under section 6G. And when you look at the 5 subsections of section 6G, to me, it seems to be number 1, which is adopt such bylaws, rules, and regulations for the guidance of the Board of Trustees and for the use of the library. You could potentially put language in there that just says with the approval of the city council. And if that means a situation where the board goes through and wants to put together whatever the situation is, the circumstances with regard to the operation of the library, they could present it to the council and the council can make a decision as to what it says at that point. Currently, that's not the way it reads, and so therefore it wouldn't happen. But the council, also, as I said before, has the ability to amend the ordinance to do what it wants to do under the ordinance. If there's something else that needs to be done, I don't know what that is. I'm not hearing that. There may be something, and that's what the workshop's for. But to me, it seems to revolve around that particular item. And, you know, that would be, you know, if there is to make a change, that to me seems to be where it would be.
Mayor,
Yes,
can I just follow up with Shauna on a quick question related to that? So obviously, as has been said, we don't really want to get involved in the day-to-day activities, but it seems as though that some of us at least want to have a backstop. So what about adding like a G6 that just gives citizens the right to appeal? And that appeal would come before the council. And then, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's a separate issue. I think the appeal isn't coming from the ordinance. The appeal process in a book challenge, we'll use as an example, is what's set forth in the policies and or bylaws of the library. So that process would go in there. I wouldn't recommend putting that in the ordinance because the ordinance is an effective law behind it. So you're putting the policies in place, and to the extent that a book challenge would come and it doesn't stop at the Board of Trustees, then that would be where I would say it would go, but not in this particular ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, just, I don't have a vote on this either way. But in the words of one or two wise previous council members, this has been in place since October of 23. It's not broken. Why are we trying to fix it? Just,
Well, that's your opinion, Mayor.
yeah, understood.
Um,
Go ahead.
this is the only, I'm a little unclear on. As I'm reading through all these documents and the terminology we're using, I'm hearing Board of Trustees and I'm hearing Advisory Board, right? So if you read through the RCWs, when it refers to Board of Trustees, they are their own body and authority making, be able to spend money, pay bills, purchase buildings, all of that, right? Now, so I just want to make sure that we're not getting confused on the name of the group and what the duty is, because it goes by the ordinance, correct?
Mhm.
And when a section in the ordinance that got my attention, however, it is under the annual budget, but it talks about authority of the city council and the mayor. If you go to section 3, it talks about the annual budget, and in there, it talks about the percentage that we're going to allocate towards the library. Great, fine, got no problems with any of that. Talks about the how to give reports and annual and 5-year and so on and so on. Section D under section 3 says, as with all city departments, the city council shall receive recommendations concerning library services and funding. So when I read that, depends on what you call a service, I guess. But I read that as that goes back to it's a communication double check with, like every other department that we have, that says, here's what we want to do and here's how much it's going to cost. And the council signs off on that. So same with, no different than the policy manual that we just has been continually being updated, because we have a great HR person. And it comes to this body, we look at it and go, yeah, that looks good to me. And we sign off on it. It's just a check on the policy. As with every other department. So why is this department any different? That's what I can't understand. And maybe that's been the way, maybe this is the way it has been from the beginning, but this is dated 2015.
Yeah,
what I'm
the change was that financial piece.
Understand.
Yeah.
Right. So, and maybe part of the problem is it's just never been looked at. Maybe part of the problem is we've all worked in unison for so long that there's never been any issues that we've had to refer back to the ordinance as to who has the final say. Well, with anything in the city, we all know the legislative body has the final say. And the mayor has their duties. We don't get into that and vice versa. So I guess that's where I'm coming from on this is where we can say how much we can allocate funds, and probably I'm guessing the majority of 5 it takes to remove somebody from the Board of Trustees. But that's really all we have to say about that department, and I'm going to call it a department because that's what it is. If you read through some of the RCW 35s and even our own ordinance, it talks quite a bit about the Board of Trustees is to guide the library director. Okay. And that's the main duty, the way I read it. Right. And that's great. I mean, one person should have the advisory of 5 smart people that are passionate about that. Sorry. So I guess that's my only issue with the ordinance is this is the only department that's any different than any other way we do business within the city, as far as the final sign off on whatever the action item is.
Except that nowhere in any of this that we've talked about so far, and that you referred to, and I read the same things that you did, does it say that the Board of Trustees' responsibility is to oversee the librarian? It says guidance, oversee a librarian, and set policy.
Right.
And our argument, our discussion, our differences have to do with who sets policy.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sure it does. That's
No,
what
they
we're
can-
coming down to.
They can identify, for me, I won't speak for everybody else, but for me, they can identify whatever policy they want. I think it's
Subject to our approval.
appropriate that it is signed off at the end by this
Yeah.
body. That's all.
That's just not in any of the discussion of the material that you had. I guess that's where you're coming from, but that's not in the RCW.
Depends on which one you look at. RCW 27,
35 isn't clear either.
it's not. That's what my point is if that's the desire of this legislative body, then that needs to be in our ordinance.
Our ordinance goes by RCW 27. In fact,
No, it
first part-
doesn't.
The
No,
first part,
it does not.
the first part that you just read says adopts bylaws, rules. And that's exactly the same as in our 119A and B.
Our ordinance says 35A.
It also says 27 later.
When you go to
Yeah,
what that says, do you want me to read it?
No,
I've got it too.
Yeah. It just says the city has the authority to make its legislative decisions as it sees fit. That's what that means. That's it. That's the only part of RCW 27 that pertains to our ordinance.
Can I jump in here real quick, Mayor?
sure.
It seems to me there are 4 options that are available. I keep writing down and it keeps getting longer in terms of the options. One would be to, as Sean mentions, to just make an amendment to that section, if that's what the council wants to do. The section 6, what was it?
G1.
6G1. The second would be to get into a larger conversation about rewriting the ordinance. Because it sounds like there's a lot of confusion, about who has the final say on some of these things, whether it's removing members of the board or all this other stuff, and it refers to all these different RCWs. And so I know that's a huge haul, but maybe that's something we ought to consider. 3 would be, for me at least, to change the appointment process. I mean, if we're going to keep it the way that it is, then I would like to have a different process for approving members of the board so we get to know them a little bit more. Typically on all these other boards and commissions, I trust the judgment of the mayor. You know, we see it on a sheet of paper and I approve it. But if we're not going to have a backstop in place on this particular board, then it seems to me that process should change a little bit. Or 4th, and I don't even know if this is possible, it's to create a library district and have the library board be directly accountable to the citizens. And then we can wash our hands of it. We don't have any say in it whatsoever.
I'm not, just for me, I'm not interested in funding the kind of money that we put towards the library and not have any say so at all in that. I don't think that's in the best interest of
Well,
our citizens.
but the library district would be funded then separately. They would go out and get the funding from the citizens. It wouldn't be a city function.
Oh,
Again, I'm not saying that's what I support. I'm just saying, it seems that that's one of the potentials to solve this problem.
Councilmember Spencer or Councilmember Dunn, we haven't heard from you guys.
For me, in considering the utility of our library as a department, the analogy stops with the position of a volunteer board of trustees. I can't think of how our planning and building services department would operate with a board of trustees. I can't think of how our human resources department would operate with a board of trustees. So the distinction of that body and their decision-making, to me, is what creates the provision to allow that. I just can't really extend analogy of the library and the notion of a department, merely a department of our city.
Sorry.
I hope everything's okay. Councilmember Spencer, anything?
Yeah, I think mostly I'd like to echo some of the things that have already been said. I think the biggest issue that came up in our previous discussion was just the expectations that perhaps this body had. Again, there were multiple members of the city council that had been asking, hey, what's the status update of this policy? So there was an expectation that, you know, perhaps there was going to be a conversation that take place and perhaps, you know, a red line version that we would take a look at and sign off on, regardless of what that decision was going to be. So, so yeah, I guess that's really just what we need to figure out is, you know, whether we are going to treat it as a department of the city, which in many ways, that's what it looks like. If we're going to be, you know, approving budgets and things like that, then it would seem to make sense to, you know, have some sort of oversight at, you know, like has been mentioned, a backstop. So it seems like that would be the easiest way to fix this issue. Updating that section 6 G1 and adding some verbiage that makes it similar. I'm just not sure what I'm not sure what the opposition would be to that, or benefits or downsides would be to that. So I guess that's what I'm hoping to get out of this conversation.
I'll chime in then.
Sure.
For me, that solves it. If we address item G1, because we just experienced a policy change without our final, yep, that's good to go. And as an elected representative of the city, if the citizens don't like, and the people that are on that board are great people and they're doing a great job, but if they don't like, if somebody doesn't like what they're doing, how do they make a change? They make a change of somebody who's sitting where I'm sitting right now. That's the only way.
But keep in mind, you can still do that the way it's written. I mean, you can remove somebody without making this change. Now, obviously, that's your prerogative, but the policy or the ordinance provides that a member can be removed just by a majority vote of the council members.
But isn't it confusing? Because there's two sections, one that says the mayor can do it, and then there's another that says the.
And we're talking about
council can do-
employees
Yeah. Then
versus
mayor
board of
is-
trustee members.
Yeah.
Board of trustee members can be removed by the
So
council.
the word official does not mean the board.
No,
No,
there's a
it's
specific
appointment.
section as it relates to the board members for removal.
Yeah, it says appointment and remove.
All
Appoint and
officers.
remove all officers and employees of the of the public library, including the city librarian, whose appointment shall be without definite term.
Maybe I have a different definition of what an officer is, but I would assume that a member of the board would be an officer.
I would
would
think that this
think
section
that too.
would then say all officers of the Board of Trustees. As it says of the public library.
Mayor,
Yes.
I guess yes, there's that function, but I don't think any of us are interested in removing anybody from their position. I think this steps way back from that, and we're just simply wanting to take a final look at the policy. We're not saying, because ultimately, if there is a policy that the citizens don't like and then they come back, we're not going to fire the whole board, right?
Yeah.
So that's not really a practical solution for, okay, well, if we want to relook at the policy, if we add a little bit of verbiage to that 6G1, then it gives us the ability to take a final look at that policy. We may agree on it and we may just say, that's great. But if not, then we're going to need to have a conversation.
Yeah, well, let me get, I totally forgot about, I don't want to say it's a story because it happened. And again, Councilmember Dunn might remember this several years ago. And Jandy, you may remember about the timing on this, but we had a citizen come and, during citizen comment 2 or 3 years ago now, maybe longer, time flies. And she was concerned about the lack of diversity in the holdings at the library. She was of another ethnic group background. And she was concerned that we didn't have enough variety. So the board took painfully went through all of the policies and reset, went through the library collection policy and everything like that and updated it, based on that citizen's concern. So it does work. A citizen brought something to the council's attention. The board addressed it. They went through the policies, updated things, made it probably more modern, right? More inclusive. And the process worked. Did I miss anything?
I think it's accurate. No, it's a good description.
Can I just follow up on
Yeah.
that? So, but what if the citizen wouldn't have been happy with let's say, for example, the board didn't do anything?
Mhm.
Then what would the citizens? What would her or him, whoever it was, what would they be able to do?
Well, again, it's been a couple of years, but it really, she gave her citizen comment. The council as a body asked the board to go through the policies and see what needed to be updated, and that was done, and we moved on.
No, I
Yeah.
get that. I understand that. I'm just saying, so what if that didn't happen though? What if the board didn't do
Well,
something? the
at that
citizen
point, the
asked
board's
for?
responsible to the council to make sure that they update the policies.
If I may, I think the short answer is that council could act to remove or change the composition of the board. If there was the, explicit recognition that the board is failing to respond or failing to discharge their duty, it's the role of the council to change up the composition of the board.
I have a thought.
Go ahead.
As long as I've been on this council, I've heard repeatedly, the council addresses matters regarding policy, procedure, resolutions, and ordinances across the board. Right?
I heard the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Says it right there.
It says it right there.
Yeah.
So I'm really having a hard time understanding why we can't just add a simple statement that says the policy, the bylaws, not just of the library trustees, but of all of our departments, which whether it says it or not, maybe it does, I don't know. But we shouldn't, does it have to be in our ordinance that the council has the final say on policy, procedure, resolution, and ordinances? No, it does not. But we should put it in there so it's clear, is my point. And back to the example that was given, how can I, as a representative of the city, if I have a group say, hey, we didn't like what they did, the board of trustees did, I have no tool to even ask the board of trustees, hey, would you reconsider? Would you relook at that? Can we have a discussion about it? And then let them take action. No different than we do with our other departments. We ask them to do things for us quite often, right? Or look into things quite often.
Mhm.
And then it comes back to the body. Oh, we like that idea. Great. That takes care of it. Everybody's happy. So how is this any different? I'm not looking to get into their business. I don't think anybody is. But I think taking away the simple tool of signing off on that section that talks about, where is it? Bylaws, rules, and regulations, nothing else. That's all it pertains to, because that's their governing policy on how they're going to do business. Correct? And I, as a council member, want to be behind that. I want to say, yep, I signed off on that. And if you don't like it, then I guess the choice you have is to vote for somebody else. That's how government works, right? So that's my approach. And I know early on, I said, hey, let's have a group discussion about this. But given some of the responses after our last meeting in November, giving some of the private conversations that different peoples have had, I think it's probably smarter to identify what it is we wanted before we go any further. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understands where I'm coming from on that.
Lieutenant, should we put the PD policy manual on there, all 600 and something pages?
Okay,
This is just
Mayor?
jokes. Great.
but the RCW talks about that. There's certain areas that as a legislative body, you can't intervene. Right? clearly says that. I looked into it. And it's like, okay. Because you're right. That's the one
Yeah.
that. It's kind of different rules, but
Right.
that is a state-driven RCW.
Yeah.
This is an RCW that you pick and choose, but we are our own legislative body and we can make our own rules and policies as we see fit.
So I guess, oh, go ahead.
Mayor, so if this is appropriate, can I make a motion to then bring back a change in the wording of that ordinance, specifically section G1, and add 5 words? And those 5 words would be subject to city council approval.
Sure, you can make the motion.
There it is.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a second by Councilmember Van Orman. Any discussion? All right, not hearing any discussion. All those in favor of bringing back a proposed amendment to ordinance 119, I think B, please say aye.
Aye.
Let me make sure we got. And those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, so motion passes, so we will bring back on the next. As soon as we can, next available meeting, the proposed change to the ordinance, and we'll have further discussion and vote then. Councilmember Kurtz.
Never mind.
No? Okay,
Kind of a follow-up.
Yep.
Uh,
and then we'll break.
question, thank you. With any other ordinance that we've made changes to, it seems like we've had a department head of some kind kind of help us along, and if we're gonna go to the trouble of addressing any changes to the ordinance, are there any other areas that we need to clean up? Is there somebody that we can ask to assist with that?
Let me see. So I guess,
Or
let's-
and maybe it's fine. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, we've got our directors meeting tomorrow morning. We'll talk about it with Jandy in the morning, see if there's anything from her side, from the library management side that needs to be cleaned up. And then we'll kind of go from there. And in the meantime, if you guys read through it again and there's something that you do think is unclear that needs to be made more clear, and it's hopefully an easy just wording change.
Right.
I don't want to get in, personally, I don't want us to have to get into rewriting the whole thing. If there's
That's-
little things that we can tweak after, almost 10 years, and to make things clear.
Thank you.
Sound good? All right,
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
and you could also just bring the ordinance back in a red line fashion for another workshop
yeah,
before bringing it for a first read. I would recommend we do that.
okay. Let's do that. And in the meantime, if you guys do see something, shoot it off to Jandy and Kelsey and I. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. It's 6:48. We will be back at 7 p.m. All right, welcome everybody to our Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 regular city council meeting. We're meeting here in the chambers. Obviously, we've got a Zoom component as well for those of you who can't make it into the chambers with us. So welcome. We are going to go ahead and start off with the invocation given by Councilmember Spencer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening as a few of thy children, and we are grateful for this opportunity that we have to gather together as a community and talk about the issues that we face together as a community. And we pray that thou will bless us as we do so, that we can find solutions that will work best for the benefit of our community. And we pray for the safety of all of our first responders and all of those who are in service in this beautiful city in any way. And these blessings and favors we pray for at this time in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we'll go through with our official roll call. Councilmember Cargill,
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz,
Present.
Councilmember Van Orman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Foliar,
Here.
Councilmember Spencer,
Present.
Councilmember Dunn,
Happy to be here.
and Councilmember Sahlberg.
Here.
It's great to have everybody back and in person. Hopefully your winter is going well. So we will move on to agenda approval. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one amendment, motion to make an amendment to item 8, adding a report from our wonderful Spokane Valley Fire Department.
All right. Do we have a second to make that amendment?
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Spencer. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have approved to add Spokane Valley Fire Department to our reports and inquiries. Approval of the amended
Okay.
agenda.
Yep, I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve the amended agenda as recently approved.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second by Councilmember Solberg. All in favor of approving the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We're on to citizen comments. So if you're here in chambers, you'll see these little yellow half sheets by the door over there. If you'd like to make a citizen comment, go ahead and fill one out and get it to Kelsey over here on the end of the table, and she'll get it over to me. The time limit is 3 minutes, and you can speak on any topic. It's truly a comment period. If there's something we need to get back to you on, we'll make sure we have your appropriate contact information so we can get back to you. For those on Zoom, if you'd like to make a comment, please send a message to Todd Henderson, our meeting host, in chat, and he will get my attention when the time comes. So we'll start off with Mark Saba from Winterglow. So he's representing Winterglow this time. Never know what hat you got on.
Mark Saba, I live 122 North Mountain Road. I am the Liberty Lake resident. I'm also on the board of directors for Winterglow. Kind of want to give you an update or a recap of Winterglow 2022. We had some issues this year because we stumbled upon, we've never had this type of weather in the past. And when you've got electricity and ice, they don't mix. We found that out. So we're living and learning through this process, and this is year 4. Again, it was a very successful Winterglow from what we got from our comments from the citizens. They love it. They want it bigger and better. So every year we're going to try to make it bigger and better. Of course. But a couple things I would like to do here publicly is thank the committee, whoever was on the committee for the hotel tax and lodging. Giving us 15 grand was awesome. It's going to be very well spent. You're going to see that 15 grand invested into new displays next year, and it's going to be pretty exciting. I also would like to thank a handful of volunteers that were out there day in, day night. I mean, they just, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have Winterglow. And the group is Rich Riley, Danny Chase, Lenny Clark, Marcia Bender, Betsy Martin, Tom Solberg, and Tom Chamberlain. These folks, I mean, from day one when we started setting up until the last day that we were shutting down, they were there all the time. And without them, I think, we wouldn't have Winterglow. It's an awesome group. It's an awesome group. Finally, like I've always said, Winterglow is always it's a year-round adventure. Okay. We have a golf tournament coming up. I'll be talking about that. It'll be on June 10th. Thinking it up Saturday the 10th. More to come. We'll be going out getting sponsors for whole sponsors, and just like we did last year. Want to make it bigger and better than last year, and I think we will. And then in October, we've also got a fundraiser, the dinner auction that'll be coming up in October. Like I said, more to come. But again, I'd like to thank the council for all their support, and we're going to be back in 2023 with our 5th year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Thank you. All right, and now we have Dr. Dale Robbins. And we'll see his name come up a little bit later as well. Welcome.
Very briefly, my wife is a nurse and I'm a doctor, but we've had 2 medical emergencies, and we fortunately have gotten the problem resolved by the time the EMTs got there. But I just wanted to give a shout out to the fire department. I just wanted to give public acknowledgement and say thank you. Nothing further.
No, thank you. I'm sure the chief appreciates it. So does Commissioner Rasmus. All right. Is there anybody online, Todd? No. Okay, so we've done with citizen comments. Just a reminder that if you think of something you want to comment on during the meeting, we have another section at the end of the meeting. That brings us to announcements, proclamations, and special presentations, of which we have none. And now on to reports and inquiries. So city council first. If anybody on city council has anything to report on, Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, I just got another date for the community calendar, March 4th, the father-daughter dance, all
Okay.
community at the Marabou Park Hotel, only 46 days away. So make your plans now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We'll add that to the calendar. All right, anybody else? Council reports? All right, mayor's report. I got an update out today and you'll see it's going to start getting really lengthy because we are in the legislative session and we have no fewer than three updates a week. So Mark and I are attending those together. So I put the notes in there, so I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just hit on some highlights, though. I will say I was late to the meeting because of a conflict, but at the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce Government Action Committee, Chief Soto was doing his presentation that we're going to see later tonight on the M&O levy coming up. And would like to consider, if there is time and availability, I would love to consider putting together the opportunity for our citizens to attend a town hall to see the presentation as well and ask questions. I think the only way to get the message out is to get support is to answer questions. People, especially when these things come up, there are always rumors going around of what it is, what it isn't, and if there's a chance for our citizens to ask questions directly of the Spokane Valley Fire Department, we'd like to provide that. So Mark is working on that. As you probably have all heard, and I sent out a couple emails on this, the governor's initial budget pushes out the north-south corridor about 6 years. And what a lot of people don't realize is that if that does get pushed out, it also affects a lot of other regional projects, specifically the changes that SRTC and Spokane County and the city of Spokane are looking at making on division going north and south. So at the SRTC Board of Directors meeting last Thursday, in addition to electing our new officers and whatnot, there was unanimous support for a resolution to support the opposition of delaying the North Spokane corridor. And through the different legislative updates I went to, it's very clear that there's bipartisan support to bring that back to the original schedule and to push back on the governor. So that was good. And if you hadn't had a chance yet, I provided a link. You can submit written comment, and then I know there will be some later on. There'll be some chances to participate in the hearing, either virtually or again by email. National League of Cities first tier suburbs meeting. That's a group I'm trying to get on the board for. It's a very large board through NLC. It was very interesting. We got a national congressional update. And then we had a great presentation by Suburban Cook County, which is includes Chicago, but this effort in particular did not include Chicago. It was talking about how homelessness is invisible in our suburbs. And how they were dealing with it. Obviously, their situation is a bit different being outside of Chicago than being outside of Spokane, but some really good lessons there for us to kind of pay attention to. SRTC will be opening their call for preservation projects. It is opening February 10th. They'll be due April 14th. There's $9.2 million set aside. So Lisa's usually right on top of this. And it's the project applications are limited to grind and overlays, chip seal and other sealant projects. And with those grind and overlays, it would also cover any ADA upgrades that would be required. So each award was not to exceed 1.5 million, and any one jurisdiction would be limited to a total awards of not exceeding 3 million. GSI legislative update. Thanks, Gary, to your team for all of that. Interestingly, we haven't had any as of that meeting on Friday. Nothing introduced yet with regards to the Blake decision and the whole, not my pants laws and all of those things. So we'll be looking for those to come up. Same with AWC, litany of things that they're watching. Probably in a week or so, AWC will start publishing their weekly hot list, which I shared with everybody on a weekly basis last year. There's just so many right now to report on. It's getting to be a lot of number and letter salad. So we'll get those narrowed down for you guys. We've had a great attendance at our employee sexual harassment in the workplace training over the last week or so. So that has been wrapped up. And as you can see, go through lots of legislative updates and other activities going on. I sent an email out to the council today as well. There are some committees and board positions open both with AWC and at the state level. So take a look at that if you're interested. I know Councilmember Sahlberg has his application in for the sentencing guideline recommendation committee. Visit Spokane has appointed their interim president CEO, which is their finance director of the last 10 years, Maureen Dodro, and she's great to work with. So they will soon be starting the search for their new president and CEO. I'll let Chief Soto talk about the AED presentation today. And last thing on here is the last email I sent. Senator Patton and a litany of others have submitted Senate Bill 5058 with regards to some relief on condo liability and trying to make it easier for builders in Washington to actually build condominiums. It's very restrictive. I don't know if anybody's been following it, the apartments over by Orchard Park and Harvest Parkway that look kind of like condos, those are actually selling as condos in Idaho. So I don't know, I have nothing to back this up, but my suspicion would be that Greenstone may be looking at in 5 years converting those to condos. It's just kind of just my personal opinion, but it's really important that we try to get some of the restrictions taken off so we can have some additional options for a little less expensive housing. I know that was a lot, sorry. So we'll go on to the city administrator report.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of council and the viewing public. You heard the mayor talk quite a bit about the legislature, so I'm not going to retread those topics. You see the events and reminders on your report there. I would say that I've gotten the last piece of feedback for the city council strategy session, so we will be getting that on the calendar and you'll be hearing much more about that. Probably going into late this week, early next week, as we tie down the logistics there. And so with that, we're going to go into these items here, starting with the quarterly donation report brought to you by Kelsey Hardy. Kelsey.
Thanks, Mark. Mayor and council, I will keep this brief. I've provided you guys with a summary of donations received in the fourth quarter of last year, which primarily consists of generous goodies around the holidays and also that generous donation from Rudine, which you guys had the opportunity to approve the beginning of December.
Does anybody have any questions about the donations? All right, thanks, Kelsey.
All right, moving on. Thanks, Kelsey. And the next item, Lisa Key is going to brief you about something that we may be bringing forward, depending on your response to this update regarding the Trailhead Flex Room naming rights. We have an MOU with the Rotary for these, but want to bring that to you tonight as a preview. So Lisa.
Thank you, Mark. Mayor, council members, as you will likely recall, our Liberty Lake Rotary Club gave us a generous donation towards the Flex Room at Trailhead, and part of the MOU for that donation had to do with naming rights for the room. And the way the MOU was written, council had final approval authority under that. However, we didn't really spell out exactly the process for how that was to occur. And so as we're working on things like signage, et cetera, the Rotary has proposed to name the Flex Room the Rotary Room. And so I bring it to you tonight with the question, pose a question to you. If if this seems reasonable and acceptable, and whether or not you feel that it would be appropriate to bring it back for a formal approval. And if so, how you would like to do that as a simple action item or as a resolution, or what's your pleasure? I'm looking to you, council members, to advise me how you would like to respond to this proposal.
Councilmember Cargill?
I just want to say that's a very unique name. I didn't expect it.
I think it would be nice to do it in a resolution to make it more formal. Councilmember Dunn?
Yeah, I'd echo it. I support the name. I love that it represents and recognizes the volunteer organizations in our community for all the things that they do. So I'm in full support, and a resolution would be an ideal way to adopt that.
Anybody else? All right, doesn't look like there's any opposition, so let's bring it back in a resolution at the next meeting if we could, please.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Next, on the agenda, we've got a police department year-end report. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Chief Simmons.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, citizens of Liberty Lake. Todd, if you can bring that presentation up, I appreciate it. Thank you. You can move on to the next slide, Todd. So I just want to take about 10 minutes or so, and I'll try to make it brief to give you a brief overview of our 2022 year at the police department. We had a great year, we had a building year. We added some great officers to our force, and we did some great things within the department that apparently and obviously is benefiting the community for what we've seen so far. Next slide, Todd. So in 2022, we hired 5 officers. Officer Rippey and Officer Howard, Officer Weidman came to us from the Washington State Patrol. Officer Holm came to us from LA County, and Officer Lee came to us from Seattle. So a wealth of experience in our lateral officers that we hired, and they're already bringing some experience and some good things to our department that, again, are going to benefit the department as well as the community. We created a second detective position to help assist with the increase in the caseload that we had, especially with some of the crime check reports that we've seen. We added a second sergeant position to assist with oversight and span of control. And the big thing, and one of the biggest things that I think we did, was we added 7 new vehicles to our fleet, which has never been done. And I'd like to thank Lieutenant Morgan for assisting me in countless hours of research and making telephone calls and contacting people to try to find these vehicles. We found, again, and I think you've heard this before, that there's a shortage of vehicles out there, not only for law enforcement, but for fire and for other city government departments as well. So to add those 7 new vehicles was huge for us, and it really helps it with our vehicle rotation. Next slide, Todd. We focused on areas such as our technology again. In April, our first couple of flock cameras, license plate recognition cameras went up in the city. We're up to 15 now. We're waiting on 4 more because of permitting. But we're also waiting because other agencies in our community, in our area, are taking advantage of this technology, such as the Spokane County Sheriff's Office in Airway Heights. And we'll be able to integrate our systems. And there's right now, the technology is almost mind-blowing what we're going to be able to do from a public safety and investigative standpoint. But I think you've heard me talk about the investigative aspect of this before. One of the things I want to bring to your attention is an officer safety issue that we had, or an officer safety incident that we had come up a couple of weeks ago, just briefly. We had a homicide suspect from Tacoma in our area. Coeur d'Alene PD just happened to bump into him. No one knew he was in our area. They got into a confrontation with him. He fled. They put out that information in the form of a BOLO to all the surrounding agencies. A smart officer within our agency took that information from the BOLO, entered it manually into our flock camera system, so our officers would know if that suspect entered our city limits. Sure enough, that suspect entered our city limits, and we received an alert that that suspect was in the city. That was huge as far as officer safety. Now, we didn't bump into that suspect, but our officers were on high alert, and that is a huge thing for not only our officers, but for our citizens as well, so we can safeguard our citizens when we have suspects such as this enter enter into our city. So this system is turning out to be a lot more than what we thought it was going to be, and we can't wait to see what happens in the future. We've hosted multiple training courses throughout the year. That is continuing this year, but in 2022, we had the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center's Basic Incident Response to Digital Evidence course. Great turnout there, top-notch training. They loved our facility. They want to come back. Another huge course was an FBI LEADUP, which is a leadership course in their trilogy. 3 courses they offer there for law enforcement leaders, supervisors, and managers, and also our FTO course. And also we supported many community events such as Skyfest at Fairchild Air Force Base. And I like to say at Fairchild, we had the #1 display. Everyone loved our cars. We couldn't keep people out of our cars. It was awesome. Cruising with the cops, Touch a Truck. Of course, we escorted the Vietnam Memorial Wall. Our benefit for Special Olympics, which is called Liberty Lake PD Cops and Cruisers, Cops, Cars, and Cruisers, excuse me. We had a booth at National Night Out that was awesome. Made contact with a lot of great people in Spokane Valley from across our region. Our Trunk or Treat event, we had a booth, and also Holidays and Heroes. And there was one other Christmas benefit that the mayor, Darren, Lieutenant Morgan, and I participated in that was awesome at Walmart. So great time there supporting our community in these events. Next slide, Todd. And here's just some pictures of us enjoying ourselves at these events. Like I said, bottom right was from Fairchild. I can't wait for Fairchild this year. It was great. We're going to expand our display there with some other things this year and make it even better. So great time there. Next slide, Todd. So our goals for 2023 are to hire 3 officers. We've already hired 2. They start February 7th. One comes to us from Kootenai County Sheriff's Office by way of LA County Sheriff's Office, and the other one comes to us from Benton County Sheriff's Office. 2 great high-speed officers. We can't wait for those officers to join our family. You've already, as the council, approved the purchase of 2 new cars, which is awesome. Thank you. But we're also looking at some other technology like drones to assist us in investigations, search and rescue, and crime scene documentation, and also some to improve or update some of our equipment in our office, such as our printers and some other equipment, computers and other equipment in our office. And of course, that third question mark out there is because our minds are always spinning and we're always looking at great, innovative new ways to make the department better, so we can make sure that we give the community the level of service that it needs and it deserves. Next slide, Todd. Training. One of my big top 3 priorities is training. The state of Washington, the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, or the CJTC, requires 25 hours of training. Our officers averaged 81.75 hours of training each. So we exceeded that exponentially. We actually assisted in some training regionally. We had our EVOC instructors assist with EVOC training this year. We had numerous officers go and become instructors in different areas, such as firearms, defensive tactics, etc. So we're improving and expanding our instructor corps. That will benefit us because we'll be more self-sufficient when it comes to training, but we'll also be able to take our instructors and teach outside of our agency and build those partnerships with other agencies so that we're all on the same page, especially when it comes to things such as active shooters and responding to critical incidents. Next slide, please. So here's our organizational structure right now. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is going to change here in the next month or 2. So, but this is what we look like right now. Next slide, Todd. So our incidents this year were up quite a bit compared to the last 3 years. The number of case reports that the officers wrote were higher than 2020, but a little less than 2021. But as you can see here, we went from 6,760 incidents in 2020 to 7,590 incidents in 2022. And I can only see that trend continuing. I don't think that we're going to see a significant dip, especially as we get bigger as a city and the criminal element gets more sophisticated and continues their enterprises. Next slide, Todd. Our arrests this year, we're right on par, a little less than our COVID year of 2020, but right even with what we saw in 2021. We had a few more juvenile arrests, 4 more than we did in 2021. But again, nothing that's too significant, like a dramatic increase in arrests. It's averaging out to around the same, with the exception of that COVID year, which I don't consider an average year by any means. Next Todd, or next slide, Todd. Our traffic collisions have been down. Our DUIs have been up slightly from 2020. Of course, again, that was a COVID year, but it's right on par with 2021. But I would like to point out that our collisions are down from 2021. I think that's in part due to our partnership and working with our engineers, such as David, to address those areas of those problem areas and those areas of concern. For instance, the slip lane in front of Walgreens. Closing that, in my opinion, based on my experience with responding to accidents and looking at accident data, as far as accident reports coming in from that area, has alleviated accidents at that location just because the lane's closed. And so we're addressing the traffic complaints. We're addressing those areas that are potentially dangerous, which I think in turn has reduced the number of collisions in those problem areas. Next slide, Todd. No significant change in domestic violence reports. You can see it's pretty much dead even. We did see a slight decrease in DV assaults for 2022, which is awesome, and we hope that trend continues. Next slide, Todd. Again, you've seen a lot of this data, but sorry, I've got a window blocking this. There we go. Just some of the data that we covered earlier. I'm not going to repeat this, but you can see that on the table here. Next slide, Todd. Type of incidents that we're responding to: no significant increases except in that area of down, a couple down. Theft, we have seen an increase in the number of thefts in our area. Again, a decrease in our traffic collisions, and no significant or anything of any concern in any other areas. But again, our theft, increase in thefts, we've been trying to address through some proactive things that we're doing, especially with our loss prevention personnel, and increasing our partnership with loss prevention in some of our businesses, such as Home Depot. I think has started to curb a little bit of that, but I think we're seeing that increase not only in our area, but across the board, across our county. Next slide, Todd. This is a little bit concerning for me, and I don't know why, but we've seen this significant increase in public record requests in 2022, a 54% increase to be exact. In order for us to abide by these public records requests, it takes a lot of work. Next slide, Todd. So, oh, I'm sorry, go back. I'm sorry. I thought there was an additional one. It takes a lot of work. There's redaction. There's all kinds of things that need to happen here. And it really keeps our administrator both socked in, Aaron, actually working really hard to make sure that, number one, when they release, especially body cam footage, when they release this information, they, number one, they're operating within the letter of the law, both by giving the requester what they are requesting, but they're also abiding by the letter of the law by redacting information that needs to be redacted, etc. I will say that a great deal of these requests are coming from people that have nothing to do with particular incidents. This seems to be a trend right now where people are just contacting police departments and requesting body cam footage and reports just to audit law enforcement, to basically find misconduct, policy violations, law violations, etc. I don't see this going down anytime soon, especially with this being so popular on social media. Next slide, Todd. Scraps responded to 79 calls for service in Liberty Lake. They impounded 44 animals. They did 7 investigations and responded to 4 emergency calls. So great work, Scraps. And we look forward to continuing our partnership with Scraps. Next slide, Todd. So this concludes my presentation. I'd just like to thank the citizens of Liberty Lake for the support that you give us as law enforcement. It's great being able to walk into a gas station and just have friendly conversations with people and to have everyone just support you and say thank you and just show love. So thank you very much for your support. And I'll take any questions. Next slide, Todd, that the council may have.
All right, thanks, Chief.
You can end that, Todd. Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and take questions. We got Councilmember Cargill first.
Thanks, Chief. Just 2 follow-up questions for you. One, can you speak to why the infractions are down so much? I mean, it seems like, I don't know, it looks as if we've all been taking some driver's ed classes or something, because it went from 604 to 330 to 135, which is great. I'm just trying to figure out why such a reduction.
I'm sorry, I have no sound. Give me a second.
Can you hear us?
Darren, any insight?
All right, okay.
Sorry about that. Looks like the chief's having some difficulties, but the main reason for our infractions being down is because some of the legislation that have been made. And it's kind of forced officers not to make as many traffic stops, if you will. They have made the stops and made the contacts, but they haven't written the citations, because the people that are actually staying and stopping for vehicles now are the people that are law-abiding citizens. So we're not writing the law-abiding citizens as many citations. And along that same lines, one of our biggest guys that was one of the biggest writers of infractions got promoted to sergeant and doesn't have radar anymore. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
That would be the other reason.
Thank you. I did have one more follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do we charge for the public records requests?
We can't.
No,
We can
it's
charge
just-
for copying, right?
There are things we can charge for.
Yeah, we can charge for the copying, but at this point, we
Yeah.
do not charge for those, because most of those have been made are through the internet, and we're actually just sending them the records through the internet and not actually making physical copies.
Okay.
Right,
That's what I wanted.
no electronic, and most of it's, I talk to Sakti regularly, and so it's mainly electronic requests.
Okay.
But if there is photocopies, or if there's a thumb drive or something along those lines, there's areas in which you can charge a little bit.
Yeah.
Does the council have to pass something, or can?
There's statutory requirements
Yeah, okay.
that's in place.
Thank you.
I have one
Yep.
question, Mayor. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, don't go away.
Yeah.
Unless Chief, do you have sound back?
I do. I jumped on my phone.
Oh,
Maybe.
maybe. Okay, go ahead.
Mine's a simple one about the cars, but how many total do we have right now?
I think 30 is
30. Okay.
and some of those are spares, and some of them we're getting rid of.
The reason I asked the question is if we're gonna replace 7 in one given year, that means when they're expired, we're gonna replace 7 again. So I was curious what percentage we're replacing how long does a car last?
Lieutenant, can you come up to the microphone? Sorry.
I apologize. So we're usually rotating about 2 vehicles per year. That's what we're looking for the 2 to replace this year. And that's about when they mileage out. It's about 5 to 7 years, basically, depending on the amount of miles that we're putting on the vehicles. And it also depends on each person who's driving the vehicle, but we try to regulate that to make sure that we rotate them out around that 5 to 7 year mark.
So the 7 are not all, we don't have them all in our possession. Okay, all right, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, is it safe to say that the detective trucks probably don't get as much mileage on them as quickly?
Or mine, I can tell you that right now. So
and
yeah,
Chiefs
mine will
too.
probably be around until I retire. So it'll be a while.
I mean, my thought was if we're gonna replace 7 in any
Yeah.
given year, then we probably need to find some sort of a piggy bank to put money in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. But as long as we're keeping on the vehicle rotation program with about 2 a year, I think we should stay ahead of it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councilmember
I
Cargill.
was just gonna make a comment about the infractions, and this is more just a comment rather than a question. if we're being limited on how many times we can pull people over or what we're able to do when we pull people over. I just did the quick math and I'm not sure what exactly the number is in terms of what an infraction would run someone, but let's say it's, $75 to $100, which is that about what it is? I mean, we're losing $50,000.
Well, we only get
We get a very, very small
And
percentage.
the rest,
of
$20
that.
the rest goes
or
to the
something.
state
Correct,
Yeah,
and the county.
correct.
Okay.
yeah. we
All
don't
right,
get
thank you.
much at all.
Very, very,
Well, the county's losing that money
there
too.
you go.
Yeah. Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, Chief, regarding the flock cameras, are we still in an evaluative mode or is that implemented and we're continuing on?
He's probably not able to hear, but yes, we're still in the evaluation mode right now. So until all those 4 additional cameras get logged on and get put into, we're actually not being charged with the block system at this point.
I mean, it's great to hear all the wonderful stories about this. I think I'm satisfied enough to kind of build this into budgeting and other actions. So just look forward to the department presenting that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we've got it in the budget for this year.
Yes,
And
we do.
the marijuana excise tax paying slated to pay for it. It's just a matter of, hey, the more free use we can get, the better.
And it works out great for us.
Anybody else have any questions? I don't see any, but I've got a couple of things just to clarify. So either lieutenant or chief. Am I correct in that we have 2 officers that are drone certified? Or we
That-
have 1 and then 1 coming?
Correct.
We're actually certified. That is
Yeah.
correct.
Great. We don't have to go through that. But
Correct.
if and when we do get the drone and I would just, I'm trying my best to make my way through all the officers. I'm trying to do like 2-hour ride-alongs is when I can. So I highly suggest, if you guys have the opportunity, schedule some. It's a really good way to get to know, especially we've got several new officers. It's a really good way to get to know some of them and, just to get to know them personally. And, it's interesting, kind of watching things as we drive through and trying to get their thought process on some things. So highly encourage that.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it, chief.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, moving on. So last council meeting, you all remember that Phil Champlin was here from the hub and he made a presentation. We talked about an appropriation coming out of the Tourism Capital Fund. Kyle Dixon has an update on that, and so I'll invite him to the mic.
Appreciate it, Mark. Mayor, council. So, yeah, as you guys will recall, I think we were anticipating an action item tonight to allocate $250,000 of tourism capital funds towards the hub expansion efforts. And so as we kind of dove into the RCW and the creating ordinances that developed this fund, some uncertainty kind of arose from that regarding what is an eligible capital purchase, what can be identified as an operating purchase. And that gave us kind of reason for pause. And so John Bouts and myself reviewed that again today. And we are going to kind of come back to the table with Phil Champlin regarding how he wants potentially to put this ask forward again so that we can couch it in terms that is allowable by RCW for council consideration. And so there's a couple different things. So and it's RCW 28, 1815 and 1816 that we will review with council once we have a better idea of how Phil wants to proceed with this ask. And myself and Sean and Phil will come back likely in the first meeting in February to discuss what that looks like and discuss how council, if council is comfortable proceeding regarding, what that revised ask looks like. So sit tight. We'll have a lot more information on February 7th at our next council meeting for council's consideration under an action item.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that? Doesn't look like it. All right. Thanks.
Moving on very quickly, you all may remember several months ago, we brought an item, an update regarding the Legacy Church lease. In our performance of due diligence, we found quite a bit more that needed to be covered, more boxes that needed to be checked. And long story short, what this came down to is approximately 11 years ago, there was something that occurred in their construction of some walls and other features. And so we're having to go back and very methodically with the current tenant, look at what needs to be done with their change of use application so that they are in compliance. But then we spend as little as possible in the future conversion of the current facility to the future proposed library. And so as that conversation has unfolded, it's taken a little bit more time for us to get to the point where we have an actual lease to bring before you, but we're getting very close. And I wanted to bring you an update tonight so that you know that that didn't fall off the table. It just required a little extra due diligence, and it's coming back before council here in the near future.
And we're still getting the rent.
Yes, rent is being paid, has been being paid since the letter of intent was signed. So any questions about that?
Doesn't look like it.
Very well. Last item on my report is an update that Kyle will bring to you regarding the police collective bargaining agreement. Kyle?
Thanks again, Mark. So as council, as you may or may not be aware, the bargaining unit on the Liberty Lake Police Department side during our last round of negotiations in 2016 into 2017 was the Teamsters. And during this process of this current contract expiring, they have been in the process of trying to decertify so that the Teamsters are no longer their labor union representation, while also attempting to form their own police guild. And so there is a state agency in Olympia that oversees this change of representation. And just today, they counted ballots to certify that change. And in 8 days, it will be final that the Liberty Lake Police Guild is officially recognized as a bargaining unit by the state, and we can begin labor agreement negotiations from there. And so I just wanted to let council know that those dates that we will sit down with them to hammer out a new agreement are forthcoming, and we will provide updates as they happen.
They may have any questions for Kyle on that. Looking forward to getting that done. All right.
Mayor, that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. So we are done with the city administrator report. We are up to Parks and Arts. Oh, Jen's here. So Jen's going to give a quick update for Parks and Arts Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. I've been asked to provide a report for them on their behalf this evening. They wanted to provide an update on their moving forward on the call to artists for the Hopetown mural sport court that they hope to put up at Pavilion Park. And I think the feedback they kind of wanted to receive from council was the call to artist is the starting point. This was budgeted for this year, but they kind of want your blessing or your feedback that they can move forward with this. Of course, the contract with the artist will come to city council for approval. But they don't want to get too far ahead if council isn't on board with this for any reason. But I think it's going to be a great project. We are slated as maintenance to go ahead and resurface that court anyhow this year. So it's going to be a financial tag team effort between Parks and Arts with what they funded for the Hopetown mural, with what we funded for the actual sports court resurfacing. It should be a really great project, and it will be a huge impact on that park. If you haven't seen pictures of those murals, it's pretty impressive. So are there any questions about that? Where they're at, where they're going, what the project is moving forward? No?
It looked like it, but I guess I'll just say, are there any objections with to the Parks and Arts Commission going forward with their called artists?
No.
I don't see any objections, Councilmember Dunn.
No, and I just want to I recognize the prior work in called artists. It's organized, it's proficient, and it delivers results. So I support the work.
All right. Great.
Thank you very much. I will pass that on to them. They are going to be hosting or having a workshop in March of their own to review their responsibilities as a commission. They've kind of steered into that conversation amongst themselves at the last couple of meetings. What are their responsibilities? What are the responsibilities of staff? Where are they going? What is their future? Kind of readdressing their strategic plan and their ideas and goals. And then they're also working on a project with, or a potential project with Daughters of the American Revolution for a memorial plaque to be placed in one of the Liberty Lake parks. It's quite a unique venture, and the plaque is placed into a small area called a Never Forget Garden. And there's some history there. If you're interested, just Google Never Forget Garden, but it has to do with the tomb of the unknown soldier. So we're hopefully working with them to do something in one of our parks come this spring, sometime around Memorial Day. And we'll keep you updated. There will be a future donation coming to you for approval for that plaque to be installed in one of our parks. We haven't quite finalized that yet. And then they wanted to share their excitement about their new 2023 commission, and that they will be providing monthly updates at the second council meeting of the month. And they plan on rotating commissioners through so that you can become familiar with each of the commissioners. So are there any questions?
I have
Oh,
one.
go ahead, Councilmember Van Orman.
Jen, where can we go ahead and look at that, the art for the sport court?
So it hasn't been collected yet. So the first step is a call to artists. And then they will select, I believe, the top 5 artists. There will be a panel that will select from there. So once we have that, we usually in past history have as a commission brought that to the council to share with them, to provide feedback, receive feedback from the council on the artwork. So it'll be probably early spring to late spring before we have something to provide that's an actual artwork option for the pavilion court.
Well, looking forward to it. Sounds like it's going to be a great addition.
It is. And if you do Google Hooptown USA image, a couple of things will come up. That's really very colorful and inspiring. Okay, great. Anybody else have any questions for Jen? All right, thanks, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now we are up to Liberty Lakes and Water District. I see Bill Genoway has joined us online, so I'll make sure you are unmuted there, Bill.
I am. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Well, greetings, Mayor and City Council. Not much to say, just work as usual. We're doing some updating on some of our policies, permitting, connections, some personnel issues. Anytime we go on property, we've got to kind of be careful and make sure that all goes and has the proper boxes are checked every time we do something on somebody's property. Everything else is just normal. Any questions? That's it.
Love to hear it's all going well. Any questions?
I only have one.
Yep, we have got one for you.
I did go ahead and bring it up in the Liberty Lake community page. Liberty Lake Water and Sewer District were great as far as having that area open so you could drop off leaves. Well, we can now see the leaves. Any way that we can get those leaves off of our lawns and where they're supposed to be? Or are you guys going to do that sometime in the spring?
Oh, you mean, so we can, so they're in our,
Yeah,
so the
now
ones
we
that
can
didn't get
actually-
picked up from our yards before. Okay,
They were
gotcha.
buried. Yes.
Well, I think the city has a spring cleanup or, where you can take them to the transfer station. No, we're not gonna open our facility again this year. It's just kind of a convenience for that time of the year. It's just something we do to support the city and our district to, clean up in the fall. But we really can't leave it open. That's not something that we are licensed to do back.
I had several go ahead and nudge me, so hey.
Okay, well, I think there'll be a process in the spring where you can do some cleanup through Waste Management. That might be an alternative when spring comes, so.
Not a
Okay.
problem. I'm just glad to see the lawn. Actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
All right, thanks, Bill. We appreciate it.
sure.
All right, next up, we have Spokane Valley Fire Department. Welcome, Chief Soto. I think we've got your presentation, I think finally came through.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members and public officials, public as well, and officers. Everybody needs a hero. All right, so tonight's presentation will be on the Spokane Valley Fire Department and our maintenance and operations levy. This is a somewhat long presentation, but I'm going to try and be respectful of everyone's time. So if you have to go use the restroom, I'll understand. So let's get started. Next slide, please. over my 27 years within the fire department, some of the things that I've learned and heard from the public, some of the things that are important to them are whether we can stand up and advance life support firefighting team, whether we are fully staffed, whether we have timely responses, and whether we have strategically located fire stations. And that's something that we do provide with Valley Fire. And I want to talk about those things as we go through this PowerPoint. As you can see, these are some of the general things that you already know about our department. The key thing I want to focus on is last year's call volume. We reached 23,235 calls, which almost 5% above the year prior's call volume. Just for your understanding, that's roughly 25% increase over the last 2 years and roughly a 79% increase in call volume over the last 10 years. 82% of those were for EMS. Next slide, please. I've often said as a coach that's coached young men and women athletes, and now as a leader among young women and men in the fire services, either we're moving forward or we're moving backward, but nobody stays the same. This fire department is all about quality improvement. Some of the major things that we look at for quality improvement and how we measure ourselves is through our accreditation through the Center for Public Safety Excellence, which we are only one of 301 in the world, one of 7 in Washington, and the only public agency east of the Cascades. To me, that speaks volumes of our inclusion of our community in every aspect that we do, and we're always being transparent. In addition to that is our Washington Survey and Rating Bureau. And this is how we pay our insurance for both businesses and the public. And that class rating is from a 1 to a 10. And a lot of our citizens don't understand this. A 10 being the worst, meaning you're going to pay a lot, and a 1 being the best. Well, there's only 6 in the state that are a 2 or higher, and we are the only class 2 east of the Cascades. And what that means for you ultimately is this: if your class rating goes up, so if we go from a class 2 to a class 3, then your annual insurance rates are going to go up by roughly 10%. So you will fill that in the pocket. So we pride ourselves on continuing to offer that and have bettered ourselves even in the unincorporated areas of Spokane County. Next slide, please. So what you see here is a map of our total response area. So it's 75 square miles where we serve the cities of Millwood, Liberty Lake, Spokane Valley, and the unincorporated areas of Spokane County, including Otis Orchards, Paradise Park, Green Acres. And as you can see, we have strategically located fire stations, and everything you see in blue is what we respond to in 5 minutes and 45 seconds or less, going without lights or sirens. And that's key because 90% of the time, that is what our gold standard is. And that's what we're being able to provide our community. There's a couple of pockets, obviously, by station 4, and we do get to those. So when we do respond code with lights and sirens, we are able to meet everywhere within our area, except for to the right of Liberty Lake, where it's on the mountain and there's no roads. Next slide, please. This map is of last year's call volume, and what it is a heat map, and it's to show our citizens exactly what it is, where our hotspots are, where we go most often. So anything in yellow is where we go a lot. So you can see that the general area within the city, but there's also a hotspot within each city, including here in Liberty Lake. Next slide, please. Over the years, people have often asked me, hey, does the fire department provide EMS services? Do you provide this? Do you provide that? We're an all hazard agency. We provide everything. And I want to be very clear on that. If you call 911, we're coming. Doesn't matter if you think it's an emergency or whether I think it's an emergency. If 911 is called, we come. We are the only department in this county that provides all the services you see on this slide and the next slide. We pride ourselves on being involved in every aspect of the fire service in regards to what we can provide. This past year, we ran almost 19,000 EMS calls, which was a 5% increase from last year's call volume. As previously noted, we were the 2022 Heart Safe Community Award winner for having the best recovery from cardiac arrest. 72% above the national average as a point. In the fires this past year, we did lose 1.5 million in property. However, we did save $11 million worth of people's properties. And I think that's huge because some of those properties are businesses. And as you know, we're all working and trying to provide for our families. And if that business, you lose that business, there's a potential for you to lose your home. So it's very important for us to get there quickly and take care of those fires. We provide take care of wildland fires, vehicle fires, hazmat responses, technical rescue, water rescues, motor vehicle accidents. There was a lot of accidents this year, all throughout our response area. So that's something we want to talk to the public about is, hey, put down your cell phones, focus on what you're doing, drive safe, because it's not just your life, it's all of us. Rescue task force, helicopter rescue, that's a big one now. And to me, this one's very important. Last month is a perfect example. And I know I have 7 missions on there. What that means is people call and say, hey, we need help. Can you send a helicopter? But we can't accept all those missions because most of them are weather based. And so we have to go, no, we can't fly right now. The weather's too bad, or no, we can't fly it there. We did accept one of the 2 missions that we accepted was last month. We had the gentleman that was involved in the avalanche down by Walla Walla in the Blue Mountains. He was on a bike, ski bike, and it took him out. When we got to him, and it took an hour to get there, he was already hypothermic, broken femur. So he was already heading towards death, and we were able to get him get him to the hospital, and he is getting a full recovery. Fire prevention, everyone wants to talk about the lights and sirens, but they forget about that aspect of fire prevention, where we're constantly in our public's homes and and businesses, and we're trying to make things better and more safe. So we put in 836 smoke alarms this past year, 89 CO alarms, 387 home safety visits. And this doesn't include when we put in grab bars. This doesn't include when we're changing batteries on smoke alarms. But the key point here is we have saved lives, and we will continue to save lives because it's important to us. Your life, we're in the life safety business. That's our #1 business. And this is a big way of being able to prevent those deaths. Next slide, please. In that like manner with prevention, our investigation team investigated 64 fires. We did have 6 arrests in coordinating as special deputies with our police departments and law enforcement. We were able to get after and arrest those that participate in arson. We provided over 1,200 permits, 1,800 plan reviews, and over almost 5,500 annual business inspections. And that's a big deal. That's a lot of inspections. We take pride in our work, and we are definitely taking care of our businesses, making sure that we keep them here. And that goes again back to that class 2 rating, right? You keep that rating low, you keep those businesses here, and you keep them moving here. Fire and EMS education, we taught over almost 23,000 students and adults this past year. We take that very serious, specifically with our hands-only CPR, stop the bleed, and fire extinguisher training. Our community partners, we are elbow deep with our community partners today. If you saw us on TV with our police partners, where we provided AEDs, we provided 13 here with Liberty Lake Police Department and 11 with Spokane Valley Police Department and the sheriffs. And that says a lot. We recognize the fact that they get on scenes a lot faster than us, and you only have 5 minutes to really save that life. That definitive care, that's only definitive cardiac arrest care that you can provide, and it has to be done within 5 minutes. So if they have that ability to start that chain of life before we get there, time is muscle, then it's that many more lives that we can save. And we've saved plenty here in the last few years. We're also partners with D8, D9, City of Spokane, and Kootenai County Fire. Our community affairs division is top notch. As you can see, we're not just out there talking about us. We're making sure we're talking about the problems that may be out there, where to avoid those problems, and things of that nature. Next slide, please. All right, so let's get to the crux of the presentation, and that's funding. We're funded 2 ways. We're a junior taxing district, and we're funded through a regular fire levy and a maintenance and operations special excess levy. We do receive 1.7 in other revenue. That's from permits and grants. Previously in 2022, 39% of our funding came from the regular fire levy, 61% from our maintenance and operations levy. And we talked about that. That is a levy that requires us to go to the voters every 4 years. It requires a 60% passing supermajority vote, and it requires 40% of the voters that attended the general election on November 8th to vote. So putting that much on top of on the life really of our department, 61% is very dangerous place to be. And that's why we brought that to the voters so that we could flip that funding and be able to have a more solvent department dependent on our permanent regular fire levy. So today it's 68% now, starting in 2023 because of that. We're at 68% and our maintenance and operations levy is at 32%. Next slide, please. So the regular fire levy, this is a replacement levy, and I can't be more clear than that. Many times people have come to me and said, hold on, chief, you just came at us with the levy lid. Absolutely, we did. But this levy, we already pay. We're paying for it right now. So this is just renewing a replacement maintenance and operations levy because we have to, because it expires every 4 years. This year is the year that ours expires. So the one that we are taking to the voters will be for 2024 to 2027. Next slide, please. So let's get to the money, because this is what everybody always wants to see is show me the money. So in 2022, you will see we're at 19 million on a regular fire levy and 30 million for our maintenance and operations levy. Yes, sir, you put those glasses on. That's what I'm talking about. This is where the important stuff is, because this is what everybody's looking at. In 2023, what we told our voters in 2022 is if we passed that levy lid, it was not about the money, and it's still not. It was about putting up a solvent fire department. And what we told them is if we got it flipped, we'd give that money back. Well, we've done it. I've already signed the paperwork. We're giving $13.5 million back to our voters this year. That's right. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. If you're paying for it, you put something in, you're getting part of that money back. So we are only using what we need to continue to operate, which is $16.5 million. You will also see in 2021, we were paying a combined levy rate of 271 per 1,000 assessed valuation. That drops this year by 50 cents per 1,000. So you will now be paying 221 for this year because we chose, not the state, but we chose to drop that by 50 cents per 1,000. Going into 2024 for the new M&O, what we're asking for from our voters is 25 million. Based on what we have been paying throughout time, the 25 million equates to $1.08 on the levy rate, which means that is the lowest that we have been paying on that as taxpayers since 1988. Okay, as a combined levy rate between the regular fire levy and the M&O levy together, that's 258, and that's the lowest we have paid since 1990. So the key things here, the key takeaways are we are still lowering what you're paying. Yes, it won't be as low as this year, but that's because we chose to lower that for you. We're cognizant of the very extreme economic times, and that was part of that. We get that levy in the past, we're going to lower it. So just showing you that you will be paying, all of us will be paying less. And more importantly, we'll still be providing what we're providing and stepping things up. Now, one of the big questions I get is, wait, hold on. How can you manage a fire department if this is the lowest we've been paying in years? That's simple. Number one, there's more citizens living in our community today. There's 9% more since our last levy. Two, there's a lot more businesses that have moved in. And number three, we only buy what we need. I have zero interest in fluff. We only get what we need. Next slide, please. In 2019, so what we brought to the voters, the things that we needed to do was replacement of aging vehicles. We were able to change some of those vehicles due to COVID that really stopped the movement of vehicles, just like Chief Simmons said. Things are so slow right now. When I first got here, the first 3 fire trucks I bought, it took 16 months to get. Today, right now, it will take 41 months. That is the wait time now. And I said wait time, that I still don't even know, in 6 months and 7 months, if that may get better or that may get worse. But it is certainly impacting all of us. Another one of those companies is Ford. Ford has, and Dodge and Chevy, the Washington fire chiefs have taken that matter to President Biden and have asked for some help in getting them to start building more vehicles, because we can't get any vehicles for staff as well. So it's very impactful. We put in alternative response unit squad 10. We got several new pieces of equipment and training. We have remodeled station 5. We are almost done with our maintenance facility. And to give you a good example of that, when we funded the maintenance facility several years ago at the beginning of this, it was for $4.2 million. That whole thing was stopped because of COVID, and it should be done now March 1st. And I bought all the parts for that a year prior to that being built, because it was that hard to get equipment. And just so you know, the cost of that now is just over $9 million because of what the economy has done. And so what we did is we didn't ask for more money. We just held off on building other items and purchasing other things so we could get something that we really needed. Station 11, that often comes up. Well, hold on, Chief. Station 11 was on there. Yes, it was. Guess what? Station 11 was on the levee lid lift that we had 15 years ago. It was on our emergency plan in 2014, and it was on our last 2 M&O levies. And I'm here to tell you, I'm all about the numbers. Right now, that area of Garland and Barker does not require a new fire station. As a fire chief, I'm all about fiscal responsibility and just the responsibility of standing up a fire department. But I will not, I want to be very clear, I will not in good conscience put in a fire station that we don't need. That is absolutely ridiculous, and I won't do it. If I put in a fire station there right now, they'd be lucky to average 1 call per day. That's not fiscal responsible. Okay. And so right now we're holding off on that, and we're going to come back around and reevaluate that. And if we need to put one in later on towards the end of our maintenance and levy, this new maintenance and levy timeframe, then we'll be able to do that. We've already submitted the plan, so all that stuff is done. It's just a matter of when we need to build it. But if you're also concerned about it still, next slide, sir. You'll see that one of the things that we're looking to build on this new maintenance and operations levy is a new training facility. The current one is 36 years old. The current tower is 36 years old, and it's falling apart. We can't burn in it. It's been superheated, and so we cannot burn in it. We had to build a little small cement structure next to it so that we could just burn some things. The actual facility itself is too small. When we put it in 30 years ago, that was for a 60-person and 6-station fire department. So we've overgrown the size of it, and it's frankly just falling apart. And so we did a needs assessment, and they were like, yeah, you guys need to go. You need to move somewhere else. So the key is we're going to put it on property we already own, which is right just to the east of our new maintenance facility at Garland and Barker. More importantly, we're building it where it will be able to hold a temporary fire station 11. So if things go south and we need to stand up a department or personnel immediately, we can do that. So we're still looking ahead and looking at what areas that we can stand up if we need to. Other things that we're looking at is obviously the continuation of replacement of vehicles. We do have a 25 with an average of over 121,000 miles and 3 that are over 23 years old. Also, as I stated previously in other presentations, our opportunity neighborhood is not the largest area in our response district, but it does take up 43% of our call volume. So the vehicles in that area, we're running the tires off of them. And some of those vehicles, like our ALS, Advanced Life Support ladders, I think that we should not be running those on those calls. Why are we sending? That's the question that you should be asking me, but I ask myself this every day, and the plan is already in place. Why are we sending our most expensive vehicle to replace and our most expensive vehicle to run to every call we go on. We're not going to do that anymore. So part of this M&O is so that I can put into place more paramedic firefighters, paramedic EMTs, and more importantly, 2 new fire engines next to the ladders where I can shut those ladders down to just where they are needed for their specific call types. I still want to continue with our alternative response units. They are making some way, but people have to understand they go to BLS calls only. And the important fact there is 60% of our EMS calls are advanced life support calls. So it does tend, those calls do tend to decrease a bit, but we're still using them. I want to continue to update our facilities and train our personnel because as I stated, we're all about quality improvement. And then of course, continue to replace the things that just are expired through wear and tear. Next slide. What happens if our M&O doesn't pass? That's a great question that most people keep asking me. Well, here are the facts. And I want to be clear, this is not a scare tactic. I'm not in the scare tactic. I'm just not too old for that stuff now. I'm just here about the facts, just the facts. I will have to close 3 fire stations. Those are stations 4, 5, and 9. They're the slowest. There's no science to it. They're the slowest stations. I would close those 3 stations. I would have to eliminate 66 positions. So there would be 66 layoffs. 58 of those would be firefighters. Some of those firefighters are paramedics. So that will also reduce our advanced life support services. They won't go completely away, but there's definitely going to be a reduction in that. I will also have to stand down 6 of our response units. So right now we have 15 frontline response units. That will be reduced to 9 with the station closures. There will be no auto aid. And this is one that I think people sometimes are a bit confused on what is automatic aid? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. So me and Officer Morgan right here are 2 different fire departments. The call, it's an advanced life support call right here next to me. And I'm a little bit right here, if you will, but he is an advanced life support paramedic. The call is going to send him and vice versa. If there's a call right here on the border that I'm just a hair closer to, but it's in his district, automatic aid says I go there before he does. So the key for that is this whole area we depend on automatic aid in order to help each other out. If you cannot stand up a fully funded fire department per contract on those auto aid agreements, then auto aid goes away. So we can no longer go to their calls and they will not come to ours. The next thing that's available is mutual aid. However, what tax base is going to say, hey, mutual aid is great if I need you every, once a month. But if I need you 5 times a day, then taxpayers quickly start asking, why am I paying taxes on my fire department that's responding for that city over there? That's not what we do. And so generally that goes away as well. So this is a real issue that we need to be concerned with. Additionally is the higher insurance rates, right? So if we lose that class 2 rating, our rating is going to go to a 4 or 5, even a 6. And when I told you each point it goes up, that's a 10% increase. So you're going to feel that in your wallet as well. And again, if it doesn't pass on February 14th of this year, then we'll have to take it to the voters again in August and then again in November. And I'll keep taking it to them until we hopefully can get that passed. Next slide, please. So what does that really look like for you and me? Well, I'm going to show you that right now. Towards the end of last year, the last 2 months, we started superseding 100 calls per day. So generally we are running 3 calls per hour, every day. Towards the end of last year, we were at 4 per hour, every day. The key there, so if you look at this map, there's 4 calls going on. Remember, 60% of our calls are advanced life support. So the calls to the west, the blue one, that's an overdose, ALS call. The call above that is the yellow orangish one, that's cardiac arrest. Way over to the right in Otis Orchards is purple. That's a fall call. It's a basic life support call. And then directly below that and to the left is a structure fire call. So that is a coded call. If you look at those, we have automatic aid units involved, and we have the exact units that we would send on those calls today. And what that does is covering all those calls, we still have 2 basic life support units available and 2 advanced life support units available. So we have 4 units available and we're on 4 calls. So overall, we have all 15 of our units and we have a total of 22 units responding, and that's with a levy. Next slide, please. This is those same call types without the levy. So what happens here is there's no auto aid. So you'll see any auto aid partners that says AA in front of it has been scratched off. Nothing has happened at the overdose call. If you go north of that to the cardiac arrest call, we've had to eliminate 2. We had to send engine 2 down to the structure fire, and Valley 31 is one of the units that we'll be eliminating. If you've moved to the right of that, you'll see squad 8 from station 8 is eliminated. Squad 10 is eliminated from station 10, and Valley engine 9 is eliminated because we've closed station 9. We've also closed station 5. So if you see it at the structure fire, it's blacked out, and we've closed station 4. So if you look at the same 4 calls, we're running the minimum standard on these calls, and there's no one available to respond to the basic life support call in Forest District. And that's what we're talking about. That's the impact. Now, these 3 calls have taken us completely off the board. And so now we're going to have to queue these calls, and they're going to have to wait for a response. And yes, if you're wondering, well, hey, that's a basic life support, maybe they can wait. Maybe they can. But you know what? Time is muscle. And if that's a cardiac arrest call, they're not going to make it. That's as simple as I can make it. Their quality of life, that return time, they're not going to make it, because we're not going to have time to get to that call. This is the reality. Next slide, please. Again, the key takeaways: we're all an all hazard fire agency, fully invested in our community. The community is growing and we need to grow with it. I struggle with the fact that since 2013, this department has not grown any. The call volume has grown by almost 80%, but we haven't grown any. And so part of this M&O is starting to grow that department to keep up with demand, because it's not just the wheels coming off the trucks. It's our personnel. Our most important resources is getting impacted both physically and mentally. And it's time to do something about it. And I think that we can do that with what we have. And this maintenance and operations levy will even be less than what we're already paying. And all that we ask is that you vote informed. I can't tell you to vote yes or no, but I can ask you to vote informed. And I will take any questions that you might have. If you go to the next slide, we also have the levy committee at SpokaneValleyFire.com. If you feel like just emailing me, I answer every email, I answer every text, every phone call. If you call, I will call you back. I take it very serious, and I'm not afraid to mix it up and answer the tough questions. So I'll open up that now if you have
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Chief Soto. I guess my question is, if the lid lift allowed you to take in, X amount extra and you're giving it back, why couldn't you use that towards the deficiency that may occur with the M&O?
Because I gave my word. I told the citizens, if you flip the script, because that was what was important to me, was being able to stand up a solvent fire department. It wasn't about the money. And I told them, if you do that for us, I'm going to give that money back, because it's not about the money. Yes, going into the future now, we can still do what we're doing now. The additional revenue is going to stand up more units. But I felt as though, and my commissioners felt as though, the best thing to do, especially when everybody got hit with a 28% increase in their assessed valuations, the inflation rate was up at its highest level in 40 years. Diesel prices were up to $6. I couldn't in good conscience not give that money back.
Good.
Just one question. A lot of great information. Thank you very much. How can we, I mean, you're presenting it tonight, but how can we get access to it to share it with others?
Absolutely. So if you go to SpokenValleyFire.com on our website, this presentation and then my ugly mug talking about it is available for you to download or send to your friends.
And we'll get it up on our website as well. And we'll try to follow up and possibly do that town hall.
Right, correct, because you all have the PDF as well.
Yep. Go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am.
One more question. When is the levy again?
It's on February 14th, 2023, but the ballots will be dropped here shortly.
Yeah.
So.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
necessarily a question about the levy, but this last year, my father-in-law was one of your statistics. And he is still alive.
Awesome.
Thanks to your response, he had what would have been a fatal stroke.
Oh,
But because
okay.
you guys responded so quickly, we had to wait for an ambulance from the South Hill. And I would hate for our community to have that, a delayed
Absolutely.
response. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
No
thank-
question, but just a
Okay.
comment, Chief.
Yes,
For over 45 years, cops and firefighters have been wondering why in the hell we have to keep sending those ladders to the medical call. So thank you for answering that, not just for running the wheels off, them, because in some cases, they were important to be there, but I appreciate you being proactive and for sticking up for your word.
Absolutely. Now, if they have to go because of the last unit to a basic life support call or an ALS call, then they will go in support, but not first out the door. That's ridiculous. And I apologize for that. It's unacceptable. And that's one of the changes we're making.
I went on one of my ride-alongs, one evening, it was after I was done with work and we heard something come over the radio and I guess there were two people stuck in the elevator at the building where I work. And the officer's like, well, you want to go check it out? I'm like, yeah, no, but we drove around the city and we came back around past the building. And there's a ladder truck in the driveway. I thought, what the heck?
Well, actually, that is the call they got.
Really?
It's a ladder call. That is a ladder call because it takes specific equipment to open up that elevator. You have to have the right equipment, elevator keys, all sorts of cool stuff to
Who
cut
would've
it up
known?
if you have to. Absolutely.
All right. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, we've got a lot still to go today, but thank you. It was a great
Absolutely.
presentation.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate that. And if you have no issues with reaching out to Community Affairs Director Julie Happy
Okay.
on setting up that town hall,
Okay.
let's do it.
Great.
I'm-
Yeah, Marco.
I'm not afraid to be a scared. So.
Good. All right.
Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Moving along, we are up to workshop discussions. First up is financial policy updates. Kyle.
Excellent. Thanks, Mayor, Council. So while Todd gets that brief presentation pulled up, it's essentially just an overview that was included in the packet of changes that we are proposing. And again, I do want to reiterate, these are proposals, these are staff suggestions and different opportunities to streamline the process for various policies included in this document. And so starting off, we'll start with policy 1315, procedure for travel authorization and reimbursement. And so the city currently utilizes a per diem reimbursement process. I believe that's been in place for about 10 years or so. And as a general policy, it's not terrible, but what we have noticed on the admin side is there's a not simple math equation involved in calculating proper per diem. So you have to go find the right city, the right county, and the right state on the right day, on the right travel day, and there's different mechanisms that staff needs to account for when you're calculating per diem. And so what myself and our city treasurer Anne Marie have seen is, through no fault of staff and elected officials, it's just, you know, it's more complicated than it needs to be. So one of these suggestions that we have on the admin side is transitioning away from per diem and transitioning to just a simple travel card. And you will collect your receipts and you will give those receipts to admin upon the completion of your travel for your training or conferences or however that works. And you have a simple form that you fill out that doesn't require extended math and uncertainty when you're submitting these documents. And so page 23 outlines that essential change in policy that we're proposing. In addition to, you want a daily meal cap. So you're not going to the Four Seasons and ordering a filet mignon for every meal. So there's different mechanisms that we've included on page 23 to kind of tidy that up and just to streamline the process, essentially. And so, it does, you're getting into it. The rationale is it does provide a more accurate cost summary of what was actually costs were actually incurred. So in theory, per diem, you could go travel to Seattle and stay with a relative and eat home cooked meals the entire time and still get the full per diem allotment, even though you actually didn't incur any expense for meals. So this actually does reflect the truer cost of what was actually incurred during travel is another rationale for that proposed change. So council, if you bear with me, I'll get through all these and then we can kind of run back through page by page and go through this as questions arise. And so policy 1320, credit card use. We're just trying to include a more robust policy into our credit card policy. And so you'll see purpose, definitions, and clarifying language and responsibilities just to ensure that we are providing that best practice policy document for audit review. There's a couple items on page 27 and 29. We're still reviewing what we think is an appropriate transaction limit for a credit card. And then also we're waiting to hear back from Chevron regarding monthly maximums and transaction amounts. And so we'll take that information and then we'll follow up with our staff on what we think an appropriate limit is for that, especially since we've gone to this fuel cloud fuel storage system. So that's accounted for a lot of our fuel use. And that's just that is stored here at City Hall, and that's accounted for in a different way. So there are different mechanisms and there's different reasons that that O&M staff in the field will need to go gas up at a gas station. We're just trying to get that number as accurate as possible to an appropriate. So we'll see that come back in a future workshop or once the resolution adopting any updates comes back for council review. So next slide, please, Todd. And so the policy 1610 is purchasing. This was brought originally back, I believe, last May for an initial council review of an update to purchasing guidelines that I think it's an appropriate time to do it. So most, if not all of these specific purchasing policies have not been updated since 2001. And they probably mirrored RCWs back then. And then as RCWs changed, we could kind of not fallen behind the times, but I think there's a periodic update that I think is appropriate in determining what level of purchase goes through what screen. And so kind of boiling this down, we'll start with the purchase of supplies, materials, equipment, things of that. And so removal of the purchase order policy. So currently purchases above 1,000 and 500 for the planning department. They do require 3 written quotes and data entry into our accounting software. It's a cumbersome, time-consuming process. I think if you ask any director, that can be streamlined appropriately. And so I think what the ask or what the proposal for council consideration is to remove the purchase order system. We're still going to get the 3 written quotes, but move that authority up to 2,500 instead of 1,000 to account for what we all know is increased, cost of living and cost of everything between, when the 1,000, I believe, was put in place back in 2001 to now to 2023. So I think that's like an appropriate, I guess, increase in that threshold. And then purchases between 2,500 and 7,500, approval by the mayor, city department directors with this 3 separate quotes, or inclusion in pre-approved state or national contact list that has met their requirements for competitive bidding. And so that you're getting that additional oversight either on the department level, the mayor level, or the city administrator level. And then moving on to to letter C, sorry. A purchase of greater than 7,500 shall require city council approval. So I think, as you all know, right now the threshold is 5,000. Anything above 5,000 goes to city council for approval. In addition to obviously the 3 written quotes, inclusion and a pre-approved state or national master contract list that has met the requirements for competitive bidding or completion of competitive bid. And then for our public works contracts for all of our infrastructure and major projects, we want to streamline that process as much as we can for our staff and for contractors that are bidding on this as well. So what we have updated, the proposal is to update that to mirror RCW. So when you have contractors bidding and us sending out competitive bid requirements, everybody's more or less on the same page with what those requirements are. Next slide, please, Todd. So continued purchasing. So you have an ongoing, I guess, threshold of 5,000 for council approval, increased up to 7,500 for council approval, and mayor and city administrator, department directors under that threshold signing off on those. And then where appropriate, allowing the updates to RCWs to be incorporated into financial policy without further action. That'll be on the public works side, not on the purchasing side. So purchase of materials and supplies and things of that nature will be beholden to this proposal or where it's at now. And the incorporation of future changes into law will have for the public works. Next slide, please, Todd. And then this is just another inclusion to identify what we're already doing, but to make sure that we're accounting for best practices regarding electronic funds transfer, formal recognition of policies currently in place to ensure that EFTs are initiated, executed, and approved in a secure manner. And it's nothing really more simple than that. It's we're taking what we know we're doing and lining it out for the auditors so they have something to audit to regarding EFTs. And with that, we can start. If council has various questions specifically on pages, we can start going through that process and getting into specific questions on the financial policy red line doc.
Let me start this time with Councilmember Van Orman.
Hi, Kyle. Remember we had that conversation regarding May 2022? The 5,000 to 7,500, and then we had another vote that took it back down to 5,000 again.
We had, so there was discussion that since there was no formal written quotes required for that, that was not something the council wanted to proceed with. Because it was, so what the RCW kind of defines is there's no formal requirements for any purchase under 7,500. And so I think what council wanted to see is, at least what I took away, and my apologies if I read that wrong, was that we would still include the 3 formal quotes up to 7,500 for, and that can be obviously at council's wish. It can be mayor, it can be city administrator, department director, and absolutely to your point, Councilmember Van Orman, if this is not something that council's comfortable with, it can stay at 5,000. Absolutely.
I believe that's what it was voted on for 4 members. So, and that was in May or June.
Yep.
The very next meeting. Thank you.
I think I had Councilmember Cargill first, then we'll come back to you, Annie.
Just a quick question, Kyle, regarding policy 1315, the very first one. So can you walk us through how that works? Are we going to have like 10 travel credit cards, or does every employee get a credit card, or how does that all pan out?
So the admin team right now manages our credit card accounts, and we can assign credit cards to a department that is specifically for travel. And so if we have 2 planning members that are going on a conference somewhere, they can either share a card or they can have their own separate cards, and they're accounting for their own separate expenses.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Kurtz.
Just going back to the question that Councilmember Van Orman asked, I thought that when we talked about this and had the vote in the past, we also talked about bringing forward the financial policies to review that at the time. So I feel like they were together and that we'd be reviewing it. And I feel like we're following through with that at this point.
Yeah. And just to point out, $5,000 adjusted from 2001 to 2023 is $8,379.36. So we do need to keep that in mind too. Who's next? Any other comments or questions? Go ahead. Mayor
Sure, I'll
Pro
go.
Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So on your, I'm looking over your per diem red line. And I see you talk about a $75 meal cap. I guess help me understand, I'll relate it to me personally. When I'm on per diem, I'm not staying in no super Motel 8 or Super 6 or whatever. I'm going to stay at the Hilton and I'll just pay the difference. So how do you work that into your equation? And how do you, the same with travel? I mean, some people have a very cost-effective vehicle that gets 40 miles to the gallon. Some of us have not that. So how can you help me understand how you work through all those variables?
Sure. And so for, so up on lodging, so the 223 on page 22, actual cost of the hotel or motel accommodations are eligible. And so there isn't any defined, I guess, limit, and that's maybe up for council discussion as well regarding lodging accommodations. And it's obviously with the understanding that these are public dollars and you are trying your best to travel at an appropriate amount of expenditures. And so to your point, you know, maybe there is something else we can work into that where it's, I do want to stay at this one facility that is $300 a night versus $150 where the conference is being held. And I'm going to go ahead and, you know, pick that up myself. And so we can absolutely include language to account for that. The rationale for the per diem just was that you're looking at straight costs. And so in regards to setting limits, I think we can absolutely look into that.
You have a limit, a daily meal cap on the meal, so it just seems that would make sense in the other departments. I'm assuming you've had on the per diem side of it, you used the example of I'm going to go stay with Aunt May in Seattle when I go, and I'm going to collect the per diem. Right? People do that all the time. So in my mind, I guess, is that an incentive to go, or is that a negative, or is it a positive, and how does that affect participation? Would be my only question. I'm sure you've had, I mean, I'm not looking to get in your business on how you want to have those discussions, but this impacts our employees. Is that correct?
Isn't it a matter of whether you like Aunt May?
I don't know. I'm just using Aunt May as an example, but so just something to consider there. I mean, maybe you've already gotten feedback and this is the result. So if that's the case, then just say so.
Yeah, and if we do that with hotels, we need to keep in mind, like when Mark and I are going to GSI fly in, is that next week already?
Next
Holy
week.
cow.
Yep.
You know, there's a hotel that they reserve rooms in. It may not be, $150 a night, but that is where everybody's staying. And so we'll need to make sure we build something in to that with regards to, the blocks that are reserved, because depending on where you are, it could be a lot, but I like that idea to address that with the hotels. Go ahead, Tom.
I do want to get in your business. Thanks for not wanting to do it, Phil, because I've been on the city, county and state per diem again for over 40 years. And I've seen the abuse that you were talking about. I have absolutely no problem, Kyle, with your suggestion to change the per diem, provided that you do it on a test or a trial basis and you compare the cost from one year to the next, because there are going to be people that are going to find a way to abuse it. And I worked for people that were supposed to be public servants, and I had board members in the city and the county. I could take my per diem and bring it back to the administrative and give them back what I didn't use. for the state, you couldn't do that. You had to take it. So you had to find a way to not take a dinner, not take a lunch, not take something so that you're actually, because I'm going to eat anyway. And if I'm not eating when I'm out, who pays for my meals right now? So I didn't think that it was really the responsibility of the employer to give me especially the 2-drink lunch and dinners. So with regard to hotels, I don't have any problem. Most of the time they're approved for government use and they have a government rate that you're going to, especially in Olympia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say yes, because if not, then I know some really good ones there and they don't cost as much. And yeah, they're not as close to the hill, but
Yeah, never, I won't say.
yeah. So if we do it, if you do change the per diem, let's please put it on a trial basis and compare.
Yeah, and having had to figure some of those things out because you're there for like when I went to DC for NLC, it's like a 5-day thing. Well, on these days they provide breakfast, on these days they don't, on these days it's a snack and not lunch, but it's a nightmare working through some of that. It's like, okay, well, I need to subtract or add this. Yeah. And I almost every
Or
time
simplify the
Marie sends it
process.
back to me corrected because I've done something wrong. Usually in the city's favor. All right. Any questions on that one, or do we just want to go ahead if there's any other questions on any of the other items?
Yeah, no, I'll
Go
ask
for
if
it.
you want, you don't
Yeah,
mind?
no,
Thank
go
you.
for it.
Let's see here, page 51 of 183. Yeah, one of my questions was, and it's been brought up already, changing it to the 7,500 instead of the 5,000, which has previously been discussed. And that's something we could talk about. I mean, that's just one item we can talk about at another time, but I'm curious how successful we're going to be with the 3 written quotes when I think it's probably a challenge majority of the time to even get 1 or 2. So we're going to kind of put a wording in our document here that what happens if we don't get 3? What are you going to do? Just wait until you get 3 and then it holds up the whatever. So I would ask that maybe that be reconsidered. I mean, have more discussion, reconsider, whatever. It just seems like that might be a pretty high bar to clear.
Yeah, I think in the past, and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, we've had instances where we send it out to 5 or 10 vendors, like you said, and we maybe get 1 or 2 back, but haven't we been able to consider like a no bid or no response as one of those? Because it doesn't say 3 responsive.
And yeah, to Mayor Pro Tem's Poyer's point, so I have actually included language just above where you guys are indicating that. So unresponsive vendors shall constitute an attempt to receive a written quote and be included as such for support for purchases if necessary. And so to your point, that is a massive issue that city nationwide and public entities nationwide are running into, is you can't get 3 bids. And a lot of times we have to suspend competitive bidding requirements altogether so we can actively go pursue 1 available unit or piece of equipment.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed that part. My next question is on page 62 of 183, architectural and engineering services contracts. Why would we give me an example of why the approval authority would be the mayor or designee? The mayor, I understand, is the red line is or designee.
So that I should have probably put city administrator there. That was my fault for not clarifying. We had discussions on the availability, because we have a mayor that has a full-time job. And so not to say that she isn't the only one that can sign for this. That was a previous insert that I included, I think, probably for that prior update that we put forward back in May, and I failed to clarify that to the city administrator.
Great. One last one, page 64 of 183, if I can. It's a whole new section 567, incorporation of future changes in law. Whenever in the future, the legislature amends the law with respect to vendor list or small works roster, those amendments shall be incorporated into the policy and the same shall be amended without further council action. If the amendment places mandatory requirements upon the city, and two, if the amendment authorizes but does not require relaxation of procedural requirements with respect to the vendor list or the small works roster. Council action to amend this policy shall be required whenever substantive changes are authorized but not required. So what's the purpose of that paragraph?
So we're essentially, if the RCW updates Public Works procurement policy, we want to be able to adapt to that. The rationale is with purchases of supplies and materials, equipment, things of that nature. We can, I think it's appropriate to set our own guidelines. If we are setting separate guidelines for public works contracts and things of that nature, then the majority of other entities, I guess my proposal or my rationale was that we would want that to coincide with what most other entities are doing in reflecting the RCW for those thresholds.
And I understand that reasoning, but I also I think it's good business that we're in the know as a council, and if something is changed, that it again is check that box. Yep, we're aware of it. Yep, sign off on it, move on.
Yep.
Well, so question.
Unless I'm not reading it right. If I'm not, just say so. I'm
Yes, so when I'm looking at, so for clarity, Kyle, so basically if the state puts either puts a new vendor on or takes one off, we basically want to be able to adopt that automatically.
Correct.
But what if we don't like that vendor because we've had bad history with them on previous projects?
But we
don't have to
then we
use
don't have to use them. These are just approved ones.
So the small works roster and vendor list are just lists that are put out by the state of companies, or they may want to do business with state agencies or local jurisdictions. And you go to the list and say, okay, we've got to buy widgets. And there's a number of companies that sell widgets. So we're going to pick these and throw out quotes for them. And then the city decides whether they like the quotes or whether they want to use them. That list changes all the time for companies and that are selling whatever products that they're selling on the list. And so they can be updated regularly. There could be changes with regard to like small works rosters. It was in the low 200s before. And I think, what is it, Kyle, 300 now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those things kind of change, but from the standpoint of the list, you don't have to use them. You're just looking for
okay.
options.
All right,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. That was all my questions.
Yeah, it's just another mechanism instead of the competitive bidding process. So you don't have to go through that, because that can be very lengthy and cumbersome for a small project. So you can go use these lists to expedite it in a quicker manner.
So you're saying that the state legislature approves the contractors on that list?
So they apply to be on the list. Yes, it's a process.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, does anybody else have any questions on the financial policy proposals? So I guess, Kyle, the next step would be to bring back another workshop, or to just bring back the policy. It's an ordinance, right?
So it's adopted by resolution.
Resolution, okay, but for discussion and further review of the red lines.
Yeah, so absolutely. So if council wishes, we can include. Well, actually, if council, if you bear with me for a second, just to get some clarity on our threshold that was proposed, we want to keep it at the 5,000. Is council comfortable increasing it to the 7,500? Because what we can do is I will bring it back in whatever form council wishes, I suppose.
Well, I guess maybe, well, jump in, anybody, but I guess my thought would be, if you want to bring it back with the 7,500, we can still redline and make a change to the resolution at that meeting when we have the action.
Mhm.
We can always have a motion to amend that number.
Okay.
We don't have to have two more meetings on it.
And the resolution will be written basically to the attached.
Right.
So this is the attachment, so you can go through the individual policies and
Yeah.
amend every single one if you wanted to theoretically, but
Kinda like
once
we
you
do with
want
the
to,
budget.
correct.
Yeah, go in and approve either one.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions before we move to the next topic?
Just one comment
Yeah,
on
sure.
those maximum numbers. As you
Yeah.
scroll through here, and I guess I really haven't had a proper amount of time to digest all of this, but some of these numbers are substantial increases, like 1,000 to 7,500 on some of these small works roster projects and stuff like that. So, I mean, for me, there's a difference between that and how much the mayor can approve and our city administrator in different areas of operations. So I don't know that at our next meeting, and Kyle, this is just some feedback for you, I guess, as you think through this. I don't know that one size fits all necessarily based on based on what we're asking the document to do for us. So that's all I have.
Well, and at that meeting, though, again, we can either have another, workshop on it when we go through and you guys want to vote on each change, or we can do that during the approval of that resolution. All right. Okay, so if there's no other questions, we're going to keep Kyle on the hook here for the implementation of transportation benefit district sales tax to offset or replace current utility tax. So I'll start real quick. So yeah, obviously last year there was a lot of discussion on, is there a way to either remove utility tax, or is there something else we can do, to generate the income that's maybe more equitable? Utility tax can be a little bit regressive, obviously, it hurts those people who can't necessarily afford those bills. And then we had the situation where, okay, well then how do we have our larger businesses with large equipment, Western States Cat, Huntwood, Peterbilt, all those, how do they pay into the road maintenance? And then, and so we didn't take any action, but then I was at a meeting in the fall and I had brought this up to Kyle, but we just hadn't had time to dig into it. But there is this option that we have of putting in a 0.1%, an additional 0.1% sales tax that can be designated toward basically transportation projects. I would, it'd be my suggestion that we would take this obviously to the voters to decide, do we, and how we would word that, I don't know, but then that's obviously your decision on how we'd go with it. But, our thought was, well, adding this additional 0.1%, which really equates to, say you buy a $50,000 car, it's an extra $50 on a $50,000 car. If you want to get a little bit of an, feel for what the impact is, but possibly replace the utility tax with this additional 0.1% sales tax, which then spreads that additional revenue over people who may not live in the city and aren't paying through their utility tax. It's going to bring people, whoever comes and shops, or, pays destination sales tax in our city, to actually have that burden. They're using the roads as well. So that was the thought behind it. So I'll let Kyle go through more of the detail.
Fantastic. Much appreciated, Mayor, for setting the plate there. And so as Todd pulls this up, a little bit of a history, I think we're all aware of why we are kind of bringing this forward. And it is as a offset to reduce or eliminate potentially the utility tax for street operations. And so we went through a couple of these that you'll see, a couple of these different scenarios on, do we do nothing with the utility tax? Do we reduce it by how much? And likely, if there isn't any other funding source to replace those reductions, then the streets operations would then be subsidized by the general fund to that extent that utility tax was decreased. And so Mayor brought this, as she said, last fall for consideration, and it's what's called the Transportation Benefit District Sales Tax. And so the legislation last year allowed for different options on how municipalities can execute this sales tax. And just off the bat, what we had discussed was this 0.1%. And I'll get into it a little bit later. It can be as simple as a councilmatic decision to, once a transportation benefit district is in place, to implement a 0.1% sales tax, which would generate roughly $675,000 in revenue for exactly what we would need it to for streets operations. It's for construction, maintenance, and operation costs in addition to other transportation use. Next slide, please, Todd. And so what a transportation benefit district is. And so a little bit of history before we dive into this. The city did have a transportation benefit district from 2002 to 2016. That was dissolved by the county because we were in tandem with Spokane County, the transportation benefit district for pedestrian uses. It was bicycle activity, it was pathways, and it was sidewalks, things of that, not roadway improvements. And so by a bond back in, I want to say 2002, Spokane County funded this transportation benefit district with $650,000 worth of bond proceeds. And that was paid off in 2016. And this transportation benefit district was subsequently dissolved. And so what the city can do is we can reform a transportation benefit district by ordinance. Following a public hearing, council finds that that action is in the public interest. And so you're establishing ordinance, specifies the boundary of the district, which in all likelihood would be concurrent with city limits. And we would have some adopting language that if the city were to ever alter its boundaries, the transportation benefit district is updated accordingly to reflect those boundaries. And so the funding source, obviously, we'll get into that here in a little bit, but they're primarily funded through vehicle license fees and or sales taxes. Other ones, so as we just mentioned back, in the early 2000s, Spokane County did proceed with the bond. There's other much less common ones. We have impact fees on Harvard Road mitigation. That's another impact. That's another mechanism. But these are rare. And so what you'll see is statewide is the majority of the funding mechanism for transportation benefit districts is sales tax, but you also have a chunk that implement vehicle license fees as well. Next slide, please, Todd. And so this gets into a little bit of this creation of where we can see this ability for the city to realize this alternate revenue source is, effective July 1st last year, this engrossed state House bill or Senate bill 5974 increased the maximum transportation benefit district sales tax authority from 0.2 to 0.3 and authorizes indefinite renewals of up to 10 years with voter approval. In addition, PBDs that all include the territory within the boundaries of the jurisdiction, which is, if this is a route we go down, this would be something that we would make sure that we were compliant with. Legislation authorizes the governing board to impose 0.1% tax of the sales tax, councilmatically or councilmanically is, I guess, the preferred term, sorry. Without voter approval is what that means, up to 10 years at a time. And so that's the sales tax portion of that. Other entities do use vehicle license fees. And so you can see here different fees for users. They start at $20. After 2 years, you can increase that to $40. After I believe it's 2 years after that, you can increase it to $50, or you can take it to the voter and you can ask for up to $100 per vehicle license fee. And so we'll get into some of the funding scenarios on the next slide, please, Todd. And so what you can see with the sales tax is it doesn't have to be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. If the city wishes to adopt a sales tax, if council wishes to adopt a sales tax after a transportation benefit district has been adopted by ordinance, we can do that. We can recognize or realize this $675,000 worth of revenue for these street operations. General fund can also subsidize any deficit created if we do choose to eliminate the utility tax or reduce it. But as the mayor mentioned, we can also look for this direct offset. And so we don't have to go up to 0.2. We don't have to go up to 0.3. But we can identify the need for street operations and ask the voters for that exact approval. And so if we ask for 0.13% transportation benefit district sales tax, we would put that on the ballot for voter approval. And we can see a true offset if we want to get rid of the utility tax. So it could be this true 1-for-1 that we can realize with the 0.13%. So if you look at the vehicle license fees, we're a city that is a lot more robust in sales taxes versus population. And so we're not getting that same bang for our buck with that small tax increase that we would be for the vehicle license fees. And so, and I'm ballparking here, let's say if we had 7,500 registered vehicles, you can see how different pricing structures for license fees generates different amounts. And so you can see it takes a lot more to get to that amount that we're looking for a true offset on vehicle license fees in excess of $100 than it is for our 0.13% sales tax. And so those are truly your two most common uses of a transportation benefit district revenue system. And as the mayor pointed out, you have this relatively minimal tax increase that could offset another tax and be spread over a much greater population base. That all of these people are coming into our cities, so in theory they are using our streets, and so you can show that if this is more beneficial, it's certainly something to consider. Next slide, please, Todd. And so if council does choose to proceed down this route, we can put together an adopting ordinance for a transportation benefit district. Create that and then go through this process of identifying exactly how council wants to put this revenue mechanism into place. Do we do 0.1% and it's a vote of council? Do we do a 0.13% and take it to the voter? Is it a partial? Do we do less than 0.1 and we offset and we reduce the utility tax by 1% or things? There's a couple different scenarios that council can consider, and if this is the route they want to go down, we can certainly continue to investigate and bring additional information forward.
All right. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Councilmember Van Orman.
I guess the first thing I'd say is definitely a way of having others pay for it that don't actually live here.
Yep.
You still have to have streets, but I wouldn't want to go ahead and keep the utility tax. It'd have to go away. Otherwise, we'd have two, and that's
a pain to manage too.
yeah. I would really be interested in looking at that. Preferably the sales tax, not necessarily the tabs.
Yeah, because with the tabs, we're back to only those in Liberty Lake, because we wouldn't be able to do that, put that on people outside this or the TBD, unless we would get approval to do a TBD that extends down into the county or whatever. And I wasn't sure who had their hand up next.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, as I read over this, I would definitely be in favor of the TBD on the sales tax side, definitely not on the car tabs. And I would be in favor of assuming the powers based on 85% of the cities and towns have established that have assumed their powers. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. Councilmember Kurtz and then Councilmember Cargill.
I guess I just had a question. So instead of our sales tax here in Liberty Lake being 8.9, it would be 9.9.
No, just
Nine.
Just 9.
9. It's
Nine.
0.1%.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I did the math of, the $50,000 car, it's $50. So it's not going to dissuade somebody from buying a car from one of our dealerships, and luckily our food doesn't have any sales tax on it here for the most part. So it doesn't affect, it's not regressive in the fact that now you're making people who need the necessities, you're not going to be burdening them with more.
Yeah, I think my reaction to it is I wouldn't be in favor of the car tab. This seems like an interesting way to spread it out above, like everybody said about everybody who comes into town and lives here using the roads. But I thought the idea was to reduce taxes. And this seems like replacing it with something else. And so I like the idea of it being spread out amongst more users and generating the money to fund the roads, which is what I had said when we talked about this a couple of times, in favor of doing something different and let's figure out a way to fund the roads. But I just wonder if that's still the fundamental question, is whether we're trying to reduce taxes or not. Because I think it makes a difference in moving forward, for me
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, well, and again, we need to look at it, and it's gonna be interesting how it would affect our businesses like the Huntwood, who's paying a lot now into utility tax because of the electric and everything, versus, they'll be paying a little bit more probably on their materials that they bring in. But, you got the same amount of potentially, let's say it's the same amount of money. And now there's, so we've got 12,500 people, paying into it right now. Now we've got, people from Otis Orchards and Idaho and Spokane Valley. And so I would hope we can work the math out a little bit more, maybe take an average, home, the average utility tax for an average home maybe, and work this out, when we bring it back for any further discussion. But the intention is to bring the burden per family down. Even though it's going to be the same amount of taxes just spread over more households. So that's the intent. So the numbers might make it look like we're, adding a tax, but we also be taking away that 3% utility tax, most likely. But we can work through some more of those numbers, Kyle. We can take a look at that a little bit more tomorrow. Okay, Councilmember Cargill, I think you're next.
Well, if it weren't a lack of decorum, I'd get up and applaud. Because I like this idea, for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it would lower taxes. I did the quick math. And for like a family of 4 who may be deducting right now sales tax of anywhere from $1,700 to $2,200 a year on their federal taxes. I mean, you're talking about maybe $15 to $30. Whereas if you add up all of your Avista bill and your cell phone tax and your garbage tax and all those ones, you're looking at somewhere between $30 and $50. And obviously that depends on how much you use those. If you use them more, it's even more expensive. The other thing that I think is important to note, as I just mentioned, by doing it this way, people can deduct this from their federal taxes.
True. I didn't even think about
Whereas
that.
utility taxes, you can't do that. So that's another benefit. And I think the third part of it is, as has been mentioned, that 675,000, if we did 0.1, a good chunk of that's going to come from RV sales and car sales and the big ticket items, Home Depot, which is going to be painful for me. But I mean, the point is that, we're not going to make it so that folks who go to the grocery store and buy something at the grocery store are going to have to pay that. And I just think it's a good way to do it. If it's me deciding, I don't even think that we need to go to voters with the 0.1, just because we're reducing the utility tax from 3 to 0, and then we're putting in its place a 0.1. Now, if we were creating a brand new tax that would be in addition to all the other ones, then I would feel differently about that. But essentially, since we're just swapping out and lowering, I don't necessarily think we need to go to voters. Those are my thoughts.
Councilmember Solberg.
Well, thank you, everybody, for making all my points. And I would have applauded too. I sent some questions to Kyle to answer. And Wendy, I think you kind of answered. Do you remember when you did the TBD and how much it was?
Yeah, it was $20 per car tab.
Is that what it was, the car tab one? Yeah, then no, I'm not in favor of that
I'm
either.
not-
But if we're going to come up $150,000 short, if we go the 1%, I totally agree that we should do it. And I don't like us coming up short on revenues. And the reason Kyle, and he'd done the math before me and done it much more accurately, but 1.3 gets us almost exactly to the same place in our budget, so that we're not increasing our taxes, but we are replacing, so that we don't lose revenue. But he suggested also, Kyle, are you going to answer that question? If you do it, you can do it better.
Which question? What was the question?
In terms of
The difference.
The difference. How we
So-
can make up the $150,000 a year difference, because right now we're at 675,000 annually per 0.1%. And if we went 0.13%, we'd be almost exactly at our 850.
be a little bit up. So yeah, it would be at 875.
So how would we make up that difference, I think is the question.
So that is really going to be a discussion between probably me and the Department of Revenue on their ability to get this decimal one spot over to get a true 1-for-1. If council does want to do that, With the understanding that if we do want to go down that route, we have to put it in front of voters for approval because it is in excess of 0.1%.
I'm okay with us finding the 150 someplace else. Not going to the voters and not creating a new tax.
Got it. Who's next? Councilmember
Well,
Spencer.
yeah, and I just wanted to add, because earlier, I would not be in favor of increasing it beyond the 1% or the 0.1% that we can do councilmatically. And then there was one other thing I was gonna say. But yeah, I don't think we should go to voters. And the other point I wanted to make was the promise that was made that we were gonna get rid of the utility tax. If we're doing that, because we are ending the year each year with excess, but we can easily absorb this in the general fund, in my opinion.
Councilmember Dunn or
Uh,
Councilmember
I
Fuller.
I just believe that increasing sales taxes have a chilling effect on businesses. Generally speaking, for business to relocate into our area, knowing that they have an increased cost to their customers, kind of makes it not attractive. I think that operating expenses based taxes like utility taxes are handled in different ways in financial statements. That, you know, depending on the operations of your business, I think maybe a little less punitive or penalizing.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem, since you haven't had a chance to speak yet.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Is it 150 reduction or 175?
It'd be 150. We're 675.
Currently,
75, Councilmember Sully.
yeah, so we're 175.
75. We're going from 850 to 675.
Okay.
I guess for me, a question that I've continually had during this discussion, and I don't know, maybe I was given the information and I don't recall it, but I still am curious, what percentage of the 850 comes from residences versus the businesses?
Did you get that from Avista, Kyle?
They were unable to piece that out.
No, because I thought they were going to be able
Are
to.
we not able to piece that out as a whole?
No, I don't think we get that detail.
We don't get that detail?
No, because each utility basically cuts a check, right, Kyle? I mean, I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but that's pretty much.
Correct. And they do not delineate when the department or so when those taxes are collected, they're not delineated between business and residents.
I guess my other comment is, let's not do a percentage of a percentage, please.
Yeah.
For somebody that deals with multiple jurisdictions with multiple sales tax rates. Thank you.
Gotcha. All right, Councilmember Van Orman, you had your hand up again.
I did. I think the one thing that we need to keep in mind is that the city of Spokane, I believe, is at 9% right now. And that's one of our jurisdictions. And the other fact is we've got Toledo Station coming on board. We've got north of Liberty Lake, all of these commercial entities that are coming to Liberty Lake
Right, and they increase
will
it.
be adding and increasing that sales tax. So,
So we might make up the whole difference.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I honestly, for me, that's a win-win. And thank you for coming up with the alternative.
Yeah, at first, when we were looking at it in the fall, we weren't sure we were gonna be, we thought we were at our limit, so that's why we didn't bring it forward then, but we started looking at it again. All right, so based on comments, I guess Kyle, what's our next step is to bring back an ordinance for TBD.
That is correct. So yeah, next step would be council review and approval of an ordinance establishing a transportation benefit district concurrent with the border of the city. And then once that's in place, that is our mechanism by which we can implement this tax. And then I would reach out to the Department of Revenue when we would adopt that. However, council wishes and proceed from there.
Mayor,
Yes,
one
sir.
question. Kyle, can you walk us through what the timeline would be to, when we're doing all this for the utility tax? If we're going to get rid of it, how much time do you need to make that happen through all the different companies and bills and everything are out there?
60 days.
60?
60 days is the time frame.
Okay. I just want to make sure there's not an overlap.
Yeah, we'll make sure we manage that. That's the last thing we need is people
Yeah.
getting hit twice. Okay,
So are you proposing that this comes back next as an ordinance?
For the TV, for the
just for these,
transportation.
to
benefit
to establish the
district.
TBD district.
Okay,
It takes a while for that to go into effect.
so what would our plan be then to share this information with the citizens of the city? And just offer some opportunity for feedback.
Well, we can certainly put something, we can work with David on some stuff on the Facebook page. The community engagement committee meets tomorrow, right? We can get the, God, you're sitting there, Mark. We can see they can help out with some engagement. Yeah, and I don't think we're in a rush. We want to make sure we do it right.
Well,
Yeah.
so that was my next
But if we can get the TBD done,
comment was, we really, we haven't taken any formal action here tonight, so. But at some point in the stage of this discussion, we'll reach out to the citizens. I'm
yeah, and the
assuming.
businesses, I've got a list of businesses. Now that we've got your feedback, that I want to make sure we engage Western States, CAD, Huntwoods, and the dealerships and even some of the smaller businesses. I talked to Trent at Trailbreaker, and granted, he's mostly food, so it's not effective, but he's a resident and a business owner, so we kind of walk through it a little bit, and we can, Valley Chamber too is a really good source to get input from the businesses. So, yeah, we want to make, like I said, we want to make sure we do it right.
And I think it's really important to make sure people understand that it's TBD and sales tax for the reduction in the utility tax, rather than just, hey, we're gonna adopt a TBD and a new sales
We'll
tax.
make sure we'll need
Yeah.
to make sure we word it properly so it's clear.
Mayor,
Yes.
Phil, I think to answer your question, you have a 60-day notice, and presumably the council wants to enact one and amend the other at the same time. So I'm envisioning that you're gonna have two ordinances. One's gonna get passed and one's gonna get amended to reduce it. So we have a 60-day notice minimum provision with regard to the utility tax. So given timing throughout and how the meetings may fall, it could be up to 90 days in my mind before we get to that point of actually having a passage at the earliest.
And the only thing
Right,
we'd
right,
be talking
15th.
about,
What's that?
Right around April 5th.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
and the only thing we'd be talking about with the first ordinance is the actual district, not the putting the sales tax in place quite yet.
But just to kind of give you an idea of the process we have to go through to get to that point to amend the utility tax. And then to make sure that, you're not charging utility tax and then a TBD tax at the same time.
Right.
It's going to take some time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. So we do have our workshop on our code of ethics. I know we keep pushing this down the road, but it's 9:18 already, and we have a lot of business to take care of, which includes a presentation on the GSI action items. So would somebody mind making a motion to move the code of ethics and social media policy out? So we can actually finish business tonight. We put it off long enough. Another meeting's not going to kill us to move it.
So
Unless you want
moved.
to get. Okay, moves, motion
Second.
by Councilmember Solberg and seconded by several people, Councilmember Van Orman.
Do we need an official date or are we
Yeah.
just?
We can say to the next meeting.
Okay.
So the motion to move
To the next
the
meeting.
code of ethics and social media policy to the next regular meeting. By Councilmember Solberg, second by Councilmember Van Orman. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, we'll move that to the next meeting. All right, now we can actually start council business. Mayor Pro Tem.
Perfect. Make a motion to approve general business consent agenda items in A and B. You need me to read it? Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cargill. All, consent agenda. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor of approving general business consent agenda items A and B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
Make a motion for general business 11A to confirm the mayor's appointment of Dale Robbins, MD, to the planning commission with the term expiring December 21st, 25.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Councilmember Dunn. So Dr. Dale Robbins is here with us. He is actually already a member of the planning commission. This is kind of a re-up of his term. He filled a midterm replacement. So you guys don't know. Dr. Robbins, if you want to pop up to the microphone and just, we had a conversation late in the year, just talking about, what his term so far and how it's gone. And I think he's been a great, really nice asset, and we'd like to have him stick around.
So Lisa asked me to join mainly because I was an attorney. And for the first 3 months of meetings, all I did was listen. But now I've learned something from every member on the committee. And now I feel like I'm a contributing member. So thank you.
Well, does anybody have any questions? It's kind of your chance to kind of get to know him or not. All right, so if there's no questions, we'll take a vote for all those in favor of appointing Dale Robbins, MD, to the Planning Commission with the term expiring December 21, 2025. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Thanks for sitting through everything. Hopefully you'll learn something here too.
Good night. All. Thank you.
Good night. All right, we've got another appointment in front of us.
Yep, make a
Mayor
motion.
Pro Tem?
Yep, make a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Robert Scadam to position 4 of the Library Board of Trustees.
Right, we have a second by Councilmember Saulberg, and Bob is with us here as well. And he's served faithfully on the Friends of the Library, and dragged there by his wife, or or she's made it so interesting. And so now we had a really good interview with him several weeks ago, and we're really looking forward to having him on the board. So if you want to say a few words, please do.
Good. Thank you, Mayor, council members, everybody that's here. Mayor Chris said it exactly. I mean, I've been involved with libraries and reading since I was about 10 years old. In fact, I sent the mayor a picture of my whole family back in a small town in Wisconsin. We were, featured as a family who came to the library, and I was 10. It was 1961. So you don't need to do the math. I'm 71. But I've been involved in libraries, and when we came out here, we went and got a library card and did all of the normal things you do when we moved here 17 years ago. And I never really got that involved with the library. And then my wife, Pat, got involved with the Friends. They needed some help with some of the social media, and my background, you can see on the information that's been provided. My background is in the payments industry, but for the last 6 years, I ran a software company. And so I kind of became the default person who posts everything about Friends of the Liberty Lake Library, silent auctions, the Valentine stuff. I don't create any of that beautiful artwork or the words. My wife does that. I just post it. But as I got involved with that, I actually became a member of the Friends. And I saw all of the, spending a lot more time at the library, I saw all the good things that happen with our library. And it just made me want to get more involved. I retired a couple of years ago, and when I saw this come up, I decided to apply. So that's why I'm here. I look forward, to working with the rest of the trustees and with the council and the folks at the library to just continue the good things we do there.
All right. Anybody have any questions? I really appreciate you again being here and sitting through everything. We've got, Bob's going to be a great member of the board. We had a couple people we interviewed, and we were lucky to have our other candidate join Parks and Arts Commission. So we're building up our boards and commissions as we need to, and I look forward to having you on the board. So all of those in favor of appointing Robert Scadam to position 4 of the Library Board of Trustees, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Mayor, make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the 2023 agreement with the Greater Spokane Incorporated in the amount of $25,000.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Dunn, and Gary Ballou is here to join us. Answer any questions, give a little presentation.
Yeah, I do have a little presentation. So good evening, Mayor, members, of council. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I also so from 2000 to 2020, and so I started with GSI as a public employee. So I worked for a county, a city, and a port. So the city of Richland for 7 years, and the attention to detail and going through these issues is important, and I appreciate your dedication to the community in doing it and having, long late night meetings. So thank you for what you do. So those are going to be kind of interesting slides. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to try to highlight a couple items on each slide. So who we are, and I really here, I just wanted to talk about, there's one word there, regional. So often folks will look at Greater Spokane Inc. Sometimes the number of times I've been called the downtown chamber. And I've only been here 2 years. So we cover the entire region of Spokane County, as well as many of our efforts go out beyond that, including our Procurement Technical Assistance Center covers 11 county region. So we serve a broader region, but we primarily focus on that boundary of Spokane County. Next slide, please. So what we do, and we talk about bringing other organizations together and convening, really economic development is a team sport, and everything we do is in partnerships. And you'll see that mentioned through here, but we work with a number of other organizations. So we can't do any of this alone. So we appreciate the city, we appreciate other partners. Next slide, please. So we'll start with greater talent. Just a couple items to highlight here. We hired this year our new Vice President of Education and Talent, Dr. Christy Harder. And it was great to have somebody in that position. We are also able to expand and hire Matthew, who's in the middle there. And our career connected learning that was focused on K through 12 education. Matthew is focusing on 18 to 30. So connecting people who are 18 to 30 years old with careers are out there. And as we look at workforce issues, and as you talk to businesses, you know how hard it is to find people. So trying to connect those folks to the careers might be available to them. The other item is in this year, in October, we held a regional career fair. We partnered with the Hub Sports Complex, which came up a little earlier tonight, and the Spokane Valley Chamber hosted a number of business, hosted over 1,200 middle school students. And getting middle school kids connected to these careers is really important because if you reach them in high school, sometimes it's too late. Next slide. Next slide. Sorry. Greater Voice, Jake Mason, our public policy director. Items to highlight: last legislative session, we supported and Senate Bill 5901 was passed. This provided a sales tax exemption for manufacturers. Important as we've gone out to talk to businesses, both seeking to expand as well as new businesses looking to come here. You mentioned the Olympia fly-in is January 25th to 27th. One item that has come up recently, and we were in the paper fairly quickly on it, was the north-south corridor and the potential delay or even stoppage in that work. And we are vehemently opposed to that and got out there publicly. And again, we will keep working that issue. And then the DC fly-in is April 24th through 28th. Next slide. So this is the Greater Growth Team. Stacia Rasmussen, who is my life sciences person, Joey Gunning, who works on he's our strategic guy, so he works on SEDS, he works on some of the small business development. Alicia Rodell, who is our PTAC or Procurement Technical Assistance Center person, and George Wagner, who's our relatively new, he's hired in June, business retention and expansion person. And we can go next slide. And we'll highlight just some of the items in here. Under life sciences, we received a $500,000 grant from Department of Commerce to create the Evergreen Biosciences Innovation Cluster. That started at the beginning of the year. That organization is really starting to take off and do some great work. We assembled $150,000 for a Spokane County Life Sciences Asset Landscape Study. And that's a long name for something that looks at the life science industry here and says, what do we have that will build life sciences, and what do we not have? So what are those gaps and how do we close those gaps? And I think we can go next slide. So the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which is a document communities are required to have to get certain funding, including Economic Development Administration funding. So this past year, we finalized the planning part of that. And the parts I wanted to highlight, we launched the plan in June, but right now we have over 90 folks from 65 different organizations who are working on implementing that plan. Out of the 101 strategies that are in the plan, 58 are either under progress, in progress, or on track. Next slide. This is our Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which is a federal program. It is very difficult for many businesses to work with the federal government. They don't make it easy. So then they pay organizations like ours, at least in part, to have somebody who will help work, help businesses work with the full, with the federal government. Here I wanted Alicia Rodell, who is our PTAC person. She's covering, I said 10, but it's actually 11 county region this year. She specializes in Forest Service. She had several clients out at the Boulder Mountain Fire. One of them had, as they were driving their truck, hit another truck, something broke. They ended up getting the part somewhere, but she ran tools up to them so they could get that part replaced. And then as she went up again, because some of the other businesses that were working that fire had questions. And so she went up and basically had during the fire PTAC session. So all these businesses that were fighting the fire could actually get paid. And I think the important one here is the 1,556 awards and over $43 million in federal contracts have been awarded to companies that Alicia has worked with this year. Next slide. So business retention expansion, George, our new guy started in June. I'm really excited about this because the #1 way to grow your economy is grow the existing businesses you have. So we have somebody fully dedicated and focused to meeting with businesses, identifying the issues or opportunities for them to grow, and then helping connect them with resources. So we worked this year with 116 businesses and assisting them in different ways. One of the ways was Carbon Quest, which is out in the city of Spokane Valley. We were able to get them a $350,000 grant from the Strategic Reserve Fund. And so, and they are busy expanding their location and using those dollars. Next slide. So Advantage Spokane, which is an element in our contract. It is the website. It's a shared web resource between the communities here in Spokane and some of the economic development groups. It is the landing page for anybody who's looking to come into Spokane and bring their business. I just wanted to show a couple quick things. This is the US map is a comparison of second quarter, the hits we were getting on Advantage Spokane versus third quarter when we were advertising. And you can kind of see that little line figure down below shows a double peak in September and October when we had some active advertising. We will be doing more advertising this year and expecting to bring more people back to that. Next slide. So another way we promote Spokane and promote the Advantage Spokane website is through a newsletter that goes out monthly to site selectors and primarily site selectors. And those are folks who work with companies who are making relocation or expansion decisions. We have a pretty good open rate, about 25% on this. Industry average is usually about 18%. And our top markets there are, top state is California and top city is Chicago. So it's just another way, and we track like which articles seem to get better open rates, and then we try to adjust as we go along. Next slide. So the outbound marketing campaign. So we went on sales missions to 3 communities this past year: LA Basin, Seattle, and Portland. When we're doing these sales missions, we use a firm that helps us. We contacted over 2,000 companies in 3 key areas, either advanced manufacturing, life sciences, or tech. Over those, we narrow down that list to companies who are looking to, one, they have an expansion plan in place in the near future, and they're willing and interested in looking at Spokane. So we came up with 35 qualified leads, 30 in-person meetings, developing a list of 18 companies likely to visit Spokane region in the future. We continue that next year by doing 3 more sales missions. We keep building that list up as we move along. Another item to highlight there is the last bullet. Towards the end of last year, we hosted a we had a site visit from a company with, was looking for, it wasn't a call center, but they needed a call center type operation. So they have about 400 and 500 employees, and showed them property around the area, including in Liberty Lake. Yeah, yeah, we were here. They told us who they wanted to meet with, so we just.
We've got a perfect
So,
building
yes.
for that, don't we?
And last slide. So just on the go where we're planning on being in 2023 in our outbound marketing. Again, a lot here. Did just want to highlight a few items. We do have our contract in front of you tonight. So it's been a great year for GSI. We are fully staffed. And I will knock on that wood. And we have a great team and really moving a number of issues forward. And I think there might be one more slide on there. That's just our events that are coming up. So we appreciate the City of Liberty Lake, your continued support, and answer any questions you might have.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Mayor. Gary, quick question. How much does the city of Spokane Valley pay for their membership?
It's the same price. The membership portion of it is 10,500. And that would be the same through all the public entities outside of the Spokane County, which is at a $75,000.
So even the city of Spokane pays 10,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's where, and we brought this up to Alicia last year as well. That's where I struggle with this, is that, our citizens have to pay more per citizen to be part of it than city of Spokane or Spokane Valley. So, I appreciate the work that you guys do, but it makes me question whether our citizens should have to pay so much more than the others should.
Correct. And the contract is, so there's elements of the contract. One is based on a membership, which is at this $10,500 level, which puts the mayor as on the board. Then there's an element that's basically buying a portion of the economic development program that is based on population. And then there is a portion like for Advantage Spokane, and that's based on population as well. So there is an element though that is fixed membership, and then two elements that are population based.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
I just want one.
Yeah, sure.
This is the same as last year.
Yeah, believe so.
It's a little less,
Is it a little
actually.
less?
So
Yeah.
we rolled the Advantage Spokane into
Thanks.
to the 25K.
Great, thank you.
All right, yeah, no, already budgeted, of course, so. If there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and take the vote. All in favor of approving mayor to execute the 2023 agreement with Greater Spokane Incorporated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that vote is 6-1, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in Olympia next week. You're not going. Okay, well, I know I'll see you online before then. All right, next
Great.
one.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve the payment of the 2023 AWC membership fee in the amount of $10,014.
Second.
And second by Councilmember Dunn. All right, any questions on this one? No, all right. Not hearing any. All those in favor of approving the 2023 AWC membership fee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-1.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of the John Deere 2030A Pro Gator in the amount of $39,216.13.
Second, all right, we have a second by Councilmember Kurtz. Any questions? I forgot, yeah, Jen's on here, I guess if you have any questions. Not seeing any. All in favor of approving purchase of the John Deere 2030A Pro Gator, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of a John Deere Z760R zero-turn mower in the amount of $14,993.74.
Right, we have a second? Second by Councilmember Kurtz. Any questions? Not seeing any. All in favor of approving the purchase of the John Deere Z760R zero-turn mower, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of a pickup truck for an amount not to exceed $54,150 from the 2023 fleet rotation plan as one becomes available.
Second, anybody? Second. Okay, that's second by Councilmember Dunn. Any questions? This is another, we need to be ready to buy it when it comes available. All right, not seeing any questions. All in favor of approving the purchase of a pickup truck not to exceed $54,150. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of 3 police department laptops from Daytech Incorporated, not to exceed $10,485, including sales tax.
Aye.
At 8.9% today.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Salberg. All right, any questions?
I do have a quick question on this
Okay.
one. Yeah, and maybe,
Tenants here.
yeah, I'm not sure whether the chiefs or. the
Yeah,
lieutenant
Chief's
can
still on as well.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out what kind of computer is this that costs so much?
Oh,
Can
you
tell
need
us?
to go on a ride along.
And it's the laptops that we use in our docking stations in each one of the cars. And that's the rising cost of each one of those. That's what it comes to. I think these are actually the desktops though, but I can't remember, but it's the laptops. So it's the laptops that we're actually asking for right now. So it's the ones that's in our cars.
Okay, thank you.
In here. Yeah, you can drop kick those things a mile and they'll still hold up. Yeah, all right. Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, it's actually $9,628 if you pull out sales tax.
I stand corrected.
Is that at 9%?
8.9.
All right, all those in favor of purchasing the 3 PD laptops from Daytech, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Last one.
Make a motion to authorize the Golf Pro to purchase 2023 Pro Shop supplies and merchandise for resale not to exceed $5,000 per order.
Second.
No second by Councilmember Dunn. All right, any questions? Discussion? All right. You've got a look on your face.
It seems like we authorized him to do this. Is this
I don't think it's been updated in the
Oh.
financial policy, so we have to redo it for this year. Is that correct, Kyle?
Correct. This is a carbon copy of your approval last year. So that was for 2022. This is for 2023.
Okay, so this is one time. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
I'm not here seeing any other questions. All those in favor of authorizing the Golf Pro to purchase 2023 Pro Shop supplies and merchandise for resale not to exceed $5,000 per order, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Woo! All right, council comments. Any council comments to be added at this point? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one, and I forgot to ask earlier, on Kyle's sales tax pitch there, could we get copies of that
Sure.
slideshow?
Yep. Kyle, you got that?
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, we have no public hearings or appeals. We do have resolution for surplus of inventory items. Kelsey.
Resolution number 22-241, a resolution providing for the disposal of certain inventory items deemed to be surplus to the reasonably foreseeable needs of the city of Liberty Lake, Washington.
Right, we have a motion.
So moved.
Right, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and then second by Councilmember Dunn. Were there any questions? The surplus list was in your packet. Any questions? Right, not hearing any. All in favor of approving? Oh, okay. Public comment. Thank you. I always forget that on resolutions. If there's anybody here in chambers or on Zoom who'd like to make a public comment on this resolution in particular, please let us know. If you're online and would like to, just go ahead and send Todd Henderson a chat notice. I'm not seeing anybody jumping up and down and make any comments here. Do we have anybody online, Todd? All right, no public comment. All right, now I'll go for the vote. All those in favor of approving resolution 22-241, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. We have no ordinances, no emergency ordinances. Introduction of upcoming agenda items. You've got the list on your desk. So we are moving the code of ethics out to the next meeting. That leaves us on February 7th. We've got that. We're looking at the Zen City demo at 6 p.m. At the request of council. We'll have a presentation and time for some questions and a little bit deeper dive into that. We've got a workshop on winter glow storage proposal at Orchard Park. We've got an update or workshop on the design costs for poles and netting, and then we're moving the code of ethics to that as well. The other ones shouldn't take real long. So Mark's gonna get out to us the date and time for the retreat slash. What are we doing it now?
Yeah, the strategic planning session by the end of this week. Yes.
Top of mind. So we'll get that date out. And then the future ones. I know Councilmember Van Orben, we moved our newsletter discussion out, so I'll just get with you whenever you're ready for that, and we'll put that on strategic plan that's coming up. I don't know, is there any desire to do a joint workshop with the library board after today's discussion? Or just want to leave that on there as TBD?
I don't think, yeah, we can just leave it on there. It's
Okay.
TBD.
Camping ordinance will come up when that's coming. We're looking, hopefully forming a work group for that. Commission appointment process. Mayor Pro Tem, you and I can get on that together a little bit before we bring that back. And then the Selkirk Middle School Hub Trail is kind of been pushed down the road because the expansion project's coming. So we've kind of put that down. Is there anything else that I'm missing that we need to put on the list for workshops?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the strategic plan and community engagement, you said that was going to be a Saturday event?
Yeah, that's when we sent Mark sent the doodle poll out on and then the email.
Right. So we had, the consensus was either make it on the 4th or the 11th. And so we've gotten all of that feedback, and it looks like it's going to be on the 4th in the afternoon, but we'll
You
get.
have heard from everybody?
Yes.
Perfect. I guess my follow-up question is, we need a Saturday to accomplish that?
Well,
I think we've got 4 hours scheduled.
So
It's
that-
kind of hard to do during the week.
Okay.
yeah, so that was part of the discussion, was either in a workshop, like a 6 PM over maybe 2, or a more involved Saturday, and the consensus was a Saturday. So then it was which Saturday? So if we want to pull that back and target some workshops, we can have that discussion.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just.
Yeah. So it's before the NCAA tournament starts, and it's before lake season.
So are we talking March?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
March 4th, okay.
March 4th. All right, so if nobody else has anything to add, we will go ahead, get back to citizen comments. I thought I saw a yellow sheet being passed around. So again, for those here in the audience, if you'd like to make a citizen comment, feel free to fill out the yellow sheet. I've got a couple here. And those online, if you'd like to make a citizen comment, just shoot a note to Todd Henderson, our meeting host, in chat. So first we have Brad Hamlet regarding the library ordinance. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Council. I had to take a little bit of time to digest the workshop that occurred earlier today. And I will say that I'm taken back a little bit. My understanding as a representative of the board and some discussions with a couple council members, that there would be a meeting of the council to discuss the ordinance and kick it around a little bit. I was surprised before meeting with the board to discuss with the board, the council, the ordinance. So I'm a little surprised that a motion was made to amend the ordinance without having that discussion or including the Board of Trustees in on that discussion. Obviously, the council is in a position and a role to do whatever they choose to do at whatever time they choose to do it. But I would like to say, maybe Mayor Chris, you said this, there was some pushback that the council acted outside of their authority when we made this policy. But if you go to our Board of Trustees page on the city website, it does say that the trustees will have a role in determining the mission of the library, setting the policy of the library that governs the library, and overseeing the general management of the library. that is on our city page. Just like to remind you about that. So I need to have some clarification. If this is changed, does that mean that the council would like the Board of Trustees to bring every policy that we review and change before you, redlined, and for your approval, each one of our policies that we review? Just would like to know that. Okay, and really, what does this change accomplish? This all came about because of one policy change in regard to book challenges. Okay, so if this policy is changed, does that mean that the council will then direct the board to readdress that, since you now are in the authority of that?
Brett, I gotta stop you.
Come on, give me at least 30 seconds,
15.
just to finish my
15.
sentence.
15.
Okay, so does that, because this is important, does this mean that you will send that back to the Board of Trustees to retool that policy to reflect what you wanted to read? That is my question, because that is a problem. It's not only a problem for you, it is a problem for the board. It is a problem for our citizens who we all represent. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you. I'll look forward to hearing from someone about allowing us to be included in any further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Brian Asmussen. I'm not quite sure how he's going to fit Rotary Hub, Fire Commissioner, CVSD, and per diem into 3 minutes. Go.
I'll give it a shot. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Brian Asmus, resident of Liberty Lake in the River District. And I'm going to talk about lots of things, as you mentioned. So almost all the different hats I wear in the community, but not quite all of them. So first of all, as a charter member of the Rotary Club and past president, thank you for your consideration on the naming of the flex space. I will tell you the conversations at our Rotary meeting was very interesting on coming up with a name. And it's Rotary Room, but it took a long time to get there. I mean, is it gonna be the Rotary Room, Liberty Lake Rotary Room? Anyways, it was a lot. It was a lot to get there, but thank you for that consideration. Also, I serve on the Hub board. So just as a reminder, our annual crab feed fundraiser is scheduled for March 18th at Center Place. It's $75 a person. Tables are available. We're limiting it to 200 guests. Fire commissioner stuff. So tentatively on our schedule on so after our next fire commissioners meeting, which I think is January 23rd, we have a teletown meeting from 5:30 to 6:30 tentatively scheduled to talk about the MNO levy. So people can call in, ask questions and view it. So that's tentative at this point. Switching hats again, Central Valley School District. Yours truly will be presenting to the community a school safety and security information forum this Thursday, the 19th, from 6 until 7:15 p.m. at the Ridgeline High School Theater. So if you want to come hear about the safety protocols and strategies we have in place at Central Valley School District, you can come and hear me chat about that. And that's it for the official stuff. Last thing I have is just to talk, you had a discussion about the per diem and travel. So just a bit of a history lesson. So prior to going to per diem, our city employees had the ability to use a purchase card, credit card for travel and those types of expenses. They moved away from that and went to the per diem. Now I see you're considering going back. So the consideration was, the reason we went to the per diem to begin with is that, and I'm sure Kyle's on top of this, can manage it. But we had a city credit limit, and we had multiple credit cards that were issued to different departments. And what was happening is that several people would be gone at the same time or traveling to different locations, and it was hitting that credit limit. And so there was times when people were traveling for training, trying to pay for the room or dinner, and then their cards were being denied. And so that's why they decided to go back to this per diem. So if you go back to the credit card for paying for travel, make sure you have a high enough credit limit that you don't embarrass your city employees. Mayor, that's all I have.
Great, awesome.
We need to give him a spot on the reports.
Yeah.
All right, so we have no executive session. Well, real quick, Todd,
Yes.
do we have somebody? Okay, Shauna Dean.
Hi, this is Shauna Dean. I am a citizen of Liberty Lake and Board of Trustee for the library. I just want to reiterate kind of what Brad commented on. If the city council is going to change the ordinance to have to approve all library rules, regulations, policies, and that's what the workshop earlier, that was what the amendment would change, so that it was with city council approval. We're going to need a lot more direction other than just an amended ordinance on exactly how you want to see all of that. Is it the library board determines the policies or the rules or the regulations and we bring it to you for approval and it's approved or not? Are you expecting workshops where you discuss everything we've already discussed? And I'm not sure what the point of the library board of trustees is, if that's what the point is. If it's not approved, then what? You tell us to go back and then tell us what to put in the policy. I'm not sure how it's going to work. So I would like either a workshop where we all meet together so you can let us know how it's going to work, or more direction when the ordinance is voted on, other than just a change to the ordinance, because what was proposed at the workshop was just with approval. That's it.
Thank you. I don't know, we're not quite sure when you left and when you made it home. That was pretty sneaky. All right, so we have no executive session. I'm assuming no more comments online, Todd. And all right, so all in favor of adjournment, please say quick aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right, we're out of here. Thanks, everybody. I'm hungry.